Chapter 609. The pill-forming process continued for an entire day within the bright red medicinal cauldron. This was half of what Guyu had expected. In the end, a dense pill fragrance seeped out of the medicinal cauldron like a dense fog. Guyu involuntarily frowned when he saw this. If this pill fragrance was allowed to spread, it might end up attracting those fellows with sharp noses. This was not a good thing for Xiaoyan. Guyu softly laughed. He waved his large hand and an invisible force swiftly formed an invisible energy barrier around 100 feet from Xiaoyan. The pill fragrance did not have the opportunity to spread under this barrier. However, even though Xiaoyan controlled the pill fragrance from spreading in all directions, the originally clear and bright sky suddenly changed color at the same time that the medicinal pill was being formed within the medicinal cauldron. The originally clear sky had turned into a rolling lightning fog in the blink of an eye. Rumbling thunder continuously sounded. Within a short couple of breaths, a dark black thundercloud had already occupied the empty space above Xiaoyan's head. However, this thundercloud still showed signs of continuing to spread. Guyu's face, which had just recovered, once again frowned when he saw this scene. An ordinary Tier 2 medicinal pill would not be able to stir such a large thundercloud. Unless, Guyu's eyes suddenly hardened when he thought of a certain possibility. While his heart was shocked, his sharp eyes immediately looked at the medicinal cauldron in front of Xiaoyan. More accurately speaking, he was looking at the Tier 2 medicinal pill that had just been refined within the medicinal cauldron. Could it be, this brat is really too frightening? Rumble, the skin at the corner of Guyu's eyes twitched intensely. Both of his eyes appeared as though he was looking at a monster as he looked at Xiaoyan. The dark black thundercloud in the sky began to become restless after his soft muttering sounded. Hu, Xiaoyan exhaled a long breath of air that had been suppressed in his chest. He had not breathed a sigh of relief for half a month. At this moment, a smile, as though he had just survived a calamity, finally surfaced on his pale face. Finally, I have succeeded in refining it. Xiaoyan sighed softly in his mouth. Only then did he slowly lift his eyes. His body, which was seated on the mountain peak, did not move. His eyes looked at the sky, where the thundercloud was churning intensely. Pill lightning Come at me if you have the ability. The corner of Xiaoyan's mouth was lifted into a faint arc. He was not the least bit nervous about this pill lightning. Instead, there was a cold smile on his face. It seemed that this thing, which could cause the expressions of most alchemists to change, was nothing to him. The thundercloud, which was churning intensely, seemed to have sensed the cold smile in Xiaoyan's heart. In the next moment, the aura of the thundercloud, which was churning intensely, became even more frightening. Soon after, a huge crack appeared in the middle of the dark black thundercloud, as though it had been forcefully torn apart. Soon after, bang! A frightening thunderbolt with a frightening aura suddenly fell from the thundercloud in the sky. Its target was Xiaoyan below, as well as the medicinal pill and the medicinal cauldron in front of him. If you are the Emperor Tribulation, I will really not be a match for you. However, since it is pill lightning, Xiaoyan laughed out loud. His seated body did not move. It was as though he was waiting for the arrival of the pill lightning. At the same time, the might of the pill lightning soared after being provoked by Xiaoyan. The invisible space collapsed wherever it passed. Even the world could not help but tremble in front of it. Even though this was the case, Xiaoyan merely let out a cold laugh in exchange for this single lightning. In the next moment, Xiaoyan waved his hand when the pill lightning was about to land. A glow suddenly flashed on the storage ring on his finger. A black light immediately shot out in a lightning-like manner. In an instant, the red light covered the empty space around him. Soon after, it violently collided with the pill lightning that was heading toward him. Bang! The world shook. An earth-shaking explosion resounded in all directions. At the same time, the attention of everyone in Shilin City was once again attracted by the thundercloud in the sky outside the city. After half a month, these people could not help but recall the scene from half a month ago when they saw the thundercloud again. However, at this moment, this thundercloud was clearly closer to them compared to the thundercloud from half a month ago. Moreover, based on what everyone knew, this thundercloud was undoubtedly a pill lightning. Since it was a pill lightning, these Band D experts in the city would involuntarily feel a curiosity and greed in their hearts. Immediately, numerous rays of light leaped into the sky from the city. All of them swiftly flew toward Xiao Yan's location. After the explosion, the black ray of light was violently sent flying by the sky-high thunderbolt. At the same time, the pill lightning was also forcefully blocked. The black ray of light landed and transformed into the figure of the Northern King. At a closer look, a frightening force had forcefully smashed a huge hole in the chest of the Northern King. It looked extremely frightening. It was difficult to imagine just how frightening it would be if the thunderbolt from earlier landed on a living person's body. Although this was the case, when Xiao Yan looked over, the huge hole in the chest of the Northern King was rapidly recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, the Northern King had completely recovered. Moreover, after being struck by the pill lightning, not only was the Northern King not injured, but his black skin had also become even darker. Many thumb-sized thunderbolts continued to flow on the surface of the Northern King's body. At a closer look, purple gold light quietly appeared on the surface of the Northern King's body. Huh? The expression in Xiao Yan's eyes involuntarily hardened when he sensed this. Soon after, a joy swiftly rose from the bottom of his heart. This kind of situation was something that Xiao Yan had seen on the golden demon puppets back then. When the color on the puppet's body changed, it proved that the puppet's strength was about to enter the next level. The little change that was happening to the Northern King in front of him indicated that the strength of the Northern King was about to surpass the Band D class and enter the elite Do D class. For the current Xiao Yan, this could be said to be a truly earth-shaking joy. Currently, the opening of the desolate ancient remains was imminent. Experts from all over the world had gathered in Shilin City. Forget about the Band D class experts, there were at least 10 elite Do D class experts. At this moment, the little change of the Northern King had created a huge problem in Xiao Yan's heart. If the Northern King broke through to the Do D class, he would have greater confidence in this trip to the desolate ancient remains. Chapter 610. Bang bang bang. Rumbling thunder sounded in all directions. A dark black thunderbolt collided intensely with a black light in the sky. Within a short moment, the two of them had already collided over 100 times. Numerous frightening energy ripples that could destroy the world continued to sweep across the empty space. The pill lightning, which was originally able to rely on the strength of the world to temporarily gain the upper hand, gradually fell into a disadvantage after exchanging over 100 blows with the Northern King. The Northern King was a puppet. Its body did not have any feeling when it fought. As long as Xiao Yan did not open his mouth to stop the fight, the Northern King would definitely fight to the death with its opponent. Moreover, when faced with the pill lightning, regardless of how strong it was, it could only be gradually swallowed by the Northern King's special ability and become a part of the Northern King's strength. The Northern King's undying and indestructible body, coupled with this strange ability to become more valiant the longer it fought, was the most frightening pill lightning in the hearts of most alchemists. However, to the Northern King, it was the best medicine to raise its strength. Bang! Following an earth-shaking bang, the pill lightning in the Northern King's hand was actually forcefully shattered by a punch. The enormous pill lightning was forcefully shattered into pieces by the Northern King's hand. Before the thunderbolt scattered, an extremely frightening suction force suddenly surged out of the Northern King's body. This suction force specialized in dealing with thunderbolts. In the blink of an eye, the shattered pill lightning that permeated the sky was completely swallowed by the Northern King. At the same time, the purple gold flowing light on the surface of the Northern King's body gradually became clearer. At this moment, the purple gold flowing light had already covered over half of the Northern King's body. From the looks of it, it was likely that the Northern King would advance to a Do D soon. At that time, Xiao Yan would no longer be afraid even if he were to face an elite Do D. After the Northern King completely absorbed the pill lightning, the dark black thunderclouds in the sky once again began to churn intensely. Compared to before, Xiao Yan was even able to sense the deep destructive strength being emitted from the thunderclouds. If Xiao Yan was the one who received this attack, it was likely that he would be seriously injured even if he could receive it. Unfortunately, the the Northern King was beside him. Regardless of how strong this pill lightning was, it was destined that it would not be able to do anything to Xiao Yan today. Rumble. An earth-shaking rumbling thunder was once again emitted. The cold-faced Northern King once again raised its eyes. Its pair of empty eyes stared at the churning thunderclouds in the sky. Immediately, a bang sounded as the Northern King's hands suddenly clenched tightly. Its feet violently stomped on the empty air, and the empty space under its feet immediately collapsed. The Northern King's body was like a sharp arrow as it instantly cut through the empty air and violently charged into the thunderclouds. Rumble. Soon after, the churning thunderclouds began to fluctuate even more intensely. Bolts of lightning shot out in all directions, as though it wanted to forcefully blast the Northern King out of the thunderclouds. From the looks of it, the thunderclouds were like a flock of sheep that had been charged into by a wolf. Even if the thunderclouds were to unleash all of its strength, it was still unable to withstand the Northern King's terrifying devouring strength. When Xiao Yan once again raised his eyes and looked over, he realized that the vast thunderclouds that had originally covered the entire sky had unknowingly shrunk to a radius of a few hundred feet. Under Xiao Yan's gaze, the thunderclouds were churning violently and the strength within them was rapidly weakening. Xiao Yan was even able to clearly see that the thunderclouds were rapidly shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was likely that it would be completely absorbed by the Northern King in a moment's time. Xiao Yan was not happy when he saw this scene. Instead, he was worried. Although the Northern King had already reached the critical point of breaking through to the Do D class, it would still be difficult for it to break through without sufficient lightning strength. At this moment, the pill lightning was about to be completely exhausted. He did not know if the Northern King would be able to successfully advance to the Do D class before the pill lightning completely disappeared. At this moment, a group of Ban D experts in the distant sky were swiftly flying towards Xiao Yan's current location. They could see the thunderclouds swiftly shrinking in the distance. This involuntarily caused the speed at which everyone flew forward to become a little faster. Finally, the thunderclouds in the sky completely disappeared. The final bolt of lightning transformed into a lightning snake. With a flash, it was absorbed into the Northern King's body to be refined. Seeing that the pill lightning had dissipated, the color of the North King's body had almost turned into a purplish gold color. However, even so, the North King's eyes were still pitch black. Clearly, even though the Northern King's strength had greatly increased to the point that it could be called a Do D, there was still a gap between the current Northern King and a true one-star Do D. Just this point alone was sufficient to cause the Northern King to be unable to defeat an elite Do D. Of course, if one really wanted to compare them, the current Northern King could be said to be unrivaled under the Do D class. Although the Northern King was not a Do D, it was already stronger than a Do D. It could be said that the current Northern King was an elite quasi-Do D. Ugh, damn it. It would have been great if that pill lightning could have lasted a little longer. Otherwise, the Northern King would have been able to successfully advance to the Do D class. Unfortunately, what a pity. Xiao Yan sighed softly with some unwillingness in his heart. Only then did he turn his gaze back to the medicinal cauldron in front of him. He curled his lips slightly and the seal in his hand swiftly changed. In the blink of an eye, a fire ring was added to the Tier 2 medicinal pill. It was the transforming pill ring. The corner of Xiao Yan's mouth was gradually lifted into a comfortable smile as he looked at the medicinal pill within the medicinal cauldron. Immediately, he beckoned with his large hand and the lid of the 10,000 beast cauldron opened. Soon after, a round, jade-like medicinal pill landed in Xiao Yan's hand. Xiao Yan randomly put away the medicinal pill. He turned his eyes and looked in the direction of Cold Stream City. Xiao Yan could clearly sense that there was a large group of people swiftly rushing toward him from that direction. It was not difficult to imagine that this group of people had been attracted by the pill lightning that he had triggered when he had refined the medicinal pill earlier. However, even if they had come now, it was already too late. The pill lightning had scattered and the medicinal pill had already landed in Xiao Yan's hand. Regardless of how fast these people came, it was ultimately useless. Hee, brat, why are you so anxious? This puppet of yours might not have truly reached the Do D class, but isn't it about to? Moreover, there is still a powerful thunderbolt strength remaining within the Northern King's body. As long as the Northern King completely absorbs that thunderbolt strength, it will be an easy matter for it to advance to the Do-D class. At this moment, Gu Yu's soft laughter that was filled with ridicule was vaguely transmitted over. Xiao Yan's expression involuntarily became startled when he heard this. He quickly recovered and a joy appeared on his face. He knew that since Gu Yu had spoken, he would definitely know what the Northern King needed to do in order to swiftly raise its strength to the Do-D class. Old Gu, I have already told you not to be too anxious about everything. No matter what it is not good to be too eager for quick success. However, this puppet of yours is really demonic. It is actually able to turn the thunderbolt strength into its own. From what I can see, this puppet of yours has already agglomerated quite a lot of thunderbolt strength. As long as it can absorb all of that thunderbolt strength, it will not have any difficulty advancing to the Do-D class. Chapter 6:11. When the half-martial emperors arrived at Xiao Yan's location, the place was already empty. Apart from a mountain range full of potholes, there was nothing left. At the moment of his death, everyone's faces were filled with disappointment. Although they could smell the faint pill fragrance in the air, they were unable to determine the direction in which the alchemist had left. As such, even if everyone wanted to investigate the origin of the medicinal pill, they had no way of doing so. By the time everyone returned angrily, Xiao Yan had already returned to Cold Stream City. There was less than half a month left before the opening of the desolate ancient ruins. Xiao Yan did not plan to go anywhere else in the remaining half a month, nor did he plan to stay cooped up in his room to cultivate. Instead, he wanted to use this half a month to have a good rest. Ever since he had left the Shilin mountain range, Xiao Yan had been constantly traveling and fighting with others. Although this kind of training could increase Xiao Yan's strength at the fastest speed, Xiao Yan's body was also left with many hidden injuries after the battles. Those internal injuries might appear insignificant and could be easily suppressed by relying on medicinal pills. However, medicinal pills were after all an external object. In a situation where he did not get any rest, the repeated accumulation of injuries in his body might not appear to be much, but once it accumulated, it would not be a good thing for Xiao Yan's training in the future. Xiao Yan's heart was filled with pain and pain. Other than this, Xiao Yan's body still had many remnants of medicinal strength left behind from using medicinal pills. These medicinal strengths also needed to be eradicated. Otherwise, if they were to accumulate for a long time, it would sooner or later affect Xiao Yan's training. On the way back to his residence, Xiao Yan did not forget to use his spiritual energy to investigate the city. Sure enough, under the investigation of Xiao Yan's spiritual energy, the current Shilin city had changed a lot compared to half a month ago. Currently, the number of half-martial emperors in Shilin city was more than twice the number of half-martial emperors in Cold Stream city. Even so, there was still a large number of half-martial emperors gathering outside the city. Currently, Shilin city could be described as a sea of people as far as the eye could see. Everywhere one looked, there was a surging sea of people. Noises could be heard unceasingly. The entire city was filled with a flourishing and lively atmosphere. The thing that caught Xiao Yan's attention the most was that there were over a dozen Do-D experts in Shilin city. These Do-D experts had all come here for the desolate ancient ruins. From the looks of it, the desolate ancient ruins this time is quite attractive. Xiao Yan softly muttered in his heart. Unknowingly, a pressure involuntarily surged out from within his heart. A Do-D was still quite a great threat to the current Xiao Yan. Although the strength of the Northern King in the storage ring was comparable to a Do-D, it was still difficult for Xiao Yan to gain a foothold in Shilin city, where many Do-D experts had gathered. The trip to the desolate ancient ruins this time around would likely be more difficult than Xiao Yan had imagined. While Xiao Yan was squeezing through the crowd and moving forward, a couple of powerful auras were suddenly transmitted over from the northern sky outside of Shilin city. The one that attracted the most attention was one of the auras. The strength of that aura caused one to involuntarily feel shocked in one's heart. Huh! The expression on Xiao Yan's face immediately changed the moment he sensed that aura. He could clearly sense that the owner of that aura was a Do-D. Moreover, that person's strength could definitely be called the strongest person in Shilin city. 3-star Dodi. His eyes involuntarily revealed a sullenness. He had originally thought that the desolate ancient ruins this time around would at the very most attract an ordinary 2-star Dodi. However, Xiao Yan had never expected that a mere desolate ancient ruins would actually be able to attract a Dodi of this level. 3-star Dodi. Even though he could only be called a low-class Dodi among the Dodi experts, a 3-star Dodi was sufficient to suppress everyone in the city at this moment in Shilin City's current situation. How can this be? Although this remains is quite attractive, it is not sufficient to cause a 3-star Dodi to appear. Xiao Yan's heart was incomparably solemn as he softly muttered. The expression on his face, which was covered by the black robe, was grave. Soon after, the expression in his eyes once again changed. The group of people in the northern sky had already arrived in the sky above Shilin City. Only at this moment did Xiao Yan sense that there was another Dodi present in this group. Moreover, the aura of this Dodi was much weaker than the former. Even though this was the case, Xiao Yan still involuntarily frowned after probing the true strength of this elite Dodi. The strength of this second Dodi had actually reached the level of a 2-star Dodi. Although it was only at the initial stage, the most shocking thing was that under the probing of Xiao Yan's spiritual strength, this 2-star Dodi was actually a young man. Who is this person? He has actually reached the level of a Dodi. Don't tell me that he is a member of the 4 great clans? Xiao Yan's expression was solemn. As someone of the same generation, this was the first time that he had seen such a young Dodi. This involuntarily caused him to feel astonished. While Xiao Yan's thoughts were flying, the group of people in the sky also slowly descended. Only then did everyone in the city clearly see the faces of this group of people. The person leading this group was an old man wearing a long blue-colored robe. The old man's appearance was ordinary. However, the thing that was memorable at a glance was the 2 long snow-white eyebrows of the old man. This old man was the 3-star Dodi that Xiao Yan's spiritual strength had probed earlier. At the same time, he was also the strongest person among this group of people who had descended at this moment. Xiao Yan's gaze shifted downwards. Immediately, the expression in his eyes became dull. He saw that on the chest of this old man was a badge that represented his clan. It was reflecting a dazzling light under the sunlight. Xiao Yan immediately understood in his heart. No wonder the strength of this group of people was actually so extraordinary. No wonder they are so strong. They are actually members of the Zhuo clan. TSK, they are indeed worthy of being the leader of the 4 great clans. Even the strength of the younger generation of the clan is so strong. The strength of the Zhuo clan can also be seen at a glance. Xiao Yan could not help but exclaim in his heart. Immediately, his eyes looked deeply at this old man. It was a long while later before his gaze slowly shifted away and turned to the side of the old man. At this very moment, beside the old man, there was a handsome young man who carried an air of arrogance between his brows. His hands were behind his back as he stood with his head held high and his chest puffed out. He was the 2-star Dodi that Xiao Yan had probed earlier. It must be said that by being able to reach the level of a 2-star Dodi at such a young age, it was likely that this young man's future would be extraordinary. If he were to grow up, it was likely that there would be a place for him among the peak experts of the western region in the future. This Zhuo clan is really extraordinary. In order to nurture such an outstanding member of the younger generation, the entire clan must have spent quite a lot of training resources. It was not difficult to see just how deep the foundation of the Zhuo clan was by being able to nurture a member of the younger generation to such a level. Xiao Yan nodded slightly. His eyes slowly swept over this young man. His gaze continued to look behind him. There were a few handsome men and beautiful women standing behind him. Each of their faces carried an arrogant expression. However, they were much inferior when compared to the former. Just as everyone's attention was on this group of people, the old man with long eyebrows, who was the leader, suddenly turned his gaze. His pair of sharp eyes instantly looked toward the eastern sky. At the same time, Xiao Yan, who was among the crowd, also looked toward the eastern sky when the old man turned his head. At this very moment, there was another similarly powerful aura that was swiftly flying in the direction of Shilin City. Chapter 6:12. Who is this person? Don't tell me that he is also from the 4 great clans? After seeing the Zhua clan, Xiao Yan's heart instantly became suspicious of the other aura that had suddenly appeared at this moment. This aura might belong to one of the 4 great clans. Haha, Zhua Bentang, it has really been a long time since we last met. Before the person had arrived, a voice that was filled with arrogance was transmitted over in a vast and mighty manner like thunder. The voice was so loud that even the sky involuntarily trembled. Humph, Hua Ba, it has been so many years since we last met. It is unexpected that you have actually broken through to the 3-star Dodi class. The leader of the Zhua clan, the old man who was called Zhua Bentang, coldly replied in an indifferent tone when he heard the loud laughter that was filled with arrogance. Haha, Zhua Bentang, on the other hand, why is your strength still stuck at the initial 3-star Dodi class after so many years? Don't tell me that you have been sleeping all these years? A group of people wearing embroidered robes slowly landed on the ground in the sky. The leader of this group was an old man with a rough face. The corner of his mouth contained some ridicule as he stared at Zhua Bentang. The words that came out of his mouth were not polite at all. The passers-by around them hurriedly squeezed to the side when they saw this group of people descend, creating an enormous empty space. Everyone's eyes were filled with fear when they looked at Zhua Bentang and Hua Ba. 3-star Dodi. This was the true strongest person in Shilin City. If anyone dared to anger him, he would be able to slap them to death in this place. Who would dare to offend such a strong person? At this moment, the scene between Hua Ba and Zhua Bentang was just like the Sun clan and the Bai clan that Xiao Yan had seen earlier. Although these few clans were factions under the Heavenly Sword sect, their relationship with each other was not friendly. On the contrary, they had been in an abyss of suffering for so many years. Of course, one did not need to think too much to guess that the Heavenly Sword sect was definitely secretly manipulating the 4 great clans for so many years. The Heavenly Sword sect did not wish for the 4 great clans to completely fight each other, but it also did not wish for them to return to peace. Its ultimate goal was to strengthen its own foundation. Although this kind of tactic appeared quite mischievous, a discerning person would be able to immediately understand. However, this tactic of the Heavenly Sword sect was always effective. At the very least, the 4 great clans were not peaceful. This was a situation that the Heavenly Sword sect wished to see. No matter how the 4 great clans fought, with the Heavenly Sword sect as a check and balance, the one who would ultimately benefit would be the Heavenly Sword sect. Although the upper echelons of the 4 great clans understood the meaning behind this, they ultimately did not choose to live peacefully for their own benefits. It was also because of the open and covert struggles between the 4 great clans that the Heavenly Sword sect possessed an extremely terrifying foundation among the 4 great sections. This was also the reason why the other 3 sects were most afraid of the Heavenly Sword sect. Humph. Zhua Bentang bitterly curled his lips. He was too lazy to argue with Hua Ba about who was right and who was wrong. This time around, all the clans had come for the desolate ancient remains. Before they came, the clan head had repeatedly warned them that no matter how big of a conflict they had with the other 3 clans, they must prioritize the desolate ancient remains. As long as they obtained the treasures within the remains, the other 3 clans would naturally deal with them in the future. Thinking until this point, Zhua Bentang finally withdrew his gaze with an unhappy face. He softly said a few words to the young man beside him. Immediately, he turned around and headed toward the residence that he had already booked. Behind him, everyone from the Hua clan also followed Hua Ba's instructions and headed toward the residence that they had booked in advance. Xiao Yan glanced at these 2 clans from within the crowd. His heart involuntarily emitted a cold laugh. When a dog bites another dog, the crazier the bites, the better. This would also make it convenient for him to fish in troubled waters when the time comes. Otherwise, if they were to reveal a group of friendliness, it would cause Xiao Yan to feel uncertain in his heart. When he saw that the 2 clans had left, Xiao Yan simply used the sky extinction step and instantly disappeared into the crowd. In a short while, he had already returned to the inn that he was temporarily staying at. After entering the room and confirming that he did not attract any attention, Xiao Yan sat down on the bed and began to secretly think about his next move. Earlier, when Zhua Bentang and Hua Ba were cursing each other, Xiao Yan had also swiftly investigated the overall strength of the Hua clan. Other than the leader, Hua Ba, who was an initial 3-star Do Di, there was another young elite Do Di in the Hua clan like the Zhua clan. His strength had also reached the level of an advanced 1-star Do Di. Although he could not be compared with the 2-star Do Di of the Zhua clan, this did not allow Xiao Yan to underestimate him. At the same time, Xiao Yan's heart involuntarily felt a deep shock because of this. Within a short day, he had met 2 elite Do Di of the same generation. Even with Xiao Yan's character, his heart involuntarily felt a shock when he encountered such a thing. After recovering, Xiao Yan organized his thoughts. Currently, he could be considered to have met all 4 great clans under the Sky Sword sect. From the looks of those 2 people earlier, it was obvious that they were not the clan heads of the Zhua clan and the Hua clan. They should only be deacon elders of their respective clans. Even though this was the case, their strength was not much different from the clan heads of the Bai clan and the Sun clan. It was difficult to imagine just how great the strength of the clan heads of the Zhua clan and the Hua clan were. It was likely that they were at least 4-star Do Di. As he thought of this, Xiao Yan's heart involuntarily tightened. When he thought of how the opponents he would face in the future were already this strong while he was still lingering around the Ban Di class, Xiao Yan involuntarily felt a prickling sensation on his back. Ugh, strength, strength. In this world, without strength, one is really worse than a pile of dog shit. Xiao Yan cursed angrily in his heart. When he recalled the arrogant expression on the face of that young man from earlier, he immediately felt an unwillingness in his heart. In the blink of an eye, there were only 5 days left until the opening of the desolate ancient remains. Finally, today, 2 auras that Xiao Yan found familiar appeared in the sky above Shilin City. Sun Shua, Baiying. Xiao Yan softly muttered the names of these 2 people. His body, which was seated cross-legged on the bed, did not move even a little. Although these 2 people had come to Shilin City, Xiao Yan was not the least bit worried that they would discover him. With the black robe that was agglomerated from the Great Way of the Void, Xiao Yan's aura had been completely covered. Currently, unless he took the initiative to release his aura, no one would be able to detect his aura. At the same time, when Baiying and Sun Shua appeared in the sky above Shilin City, the other 2 clans in the city had also sensed their auras. Immediately, 4 pairs of eyes shot out in unison. Separated by layers of buildings, an intense exchange took place in the invisible empty space. Chapter 613. The arrival of Baiying and Sun Shua in the sky above Shilin City immediately attracted the attention of quite a number of people in the city. With regards to the 2 clan leaders of the 2 great clans, who had recently caused an uproar, everyone was prepared to watch a show. Now that the 2 of them had appeared, it was inevitable that a commotion would be stirred. Hee, aren't they the patriarchs of the Sun family and the Bai family? I heard that 3 months ago, these 2 families were fighting over Xiao Yan. However, in the end, he was taken away by the patriarch of the Bai family. That's right. Not only was he taken away by the Bai family, but he was also taken away from the headquarters of the Sun family, the Coldstream City. I heard that after this incident, many elders of the Sun family were dismissed by the patriarch of the Sun family. There were even a few elders with high positions who were killed by the patriarch of the Sun family in a fit of anger because they didn't dare to take action against Xiao Yan. Humph, take action? Are you joking? I was present at that time. All of you might not know this, but that Xiao Yan is not an ordinary ferocity. He relied on himself, a 6-star Ban Di, to oppress everyone in the city. At that time, there were over a dozen 9-star Ban Di emperors present. There were countless 7-star and 8-star Ban Di emperors. However, even though this was the case, Xiao Yan was like hammering watermelons in front of him. Hundreds of Ban Di emperors were all defeated by him alone. Yet, he still dared to say that he would fight? How could he take action against Xiao Yan? At that time, the people of the Sun family were scared out of their wits. Who would dare to take action against Xiao Yan? Wouldn't that be courting death? That's right. Later on, even the clan head of the Sun clan suffered a setback in Xiao Yan's hands. Half of his face was beaten until it was even larger than its original head. Even the clan head was beaten until he became like this. Who else could step forward? That's right. It is said that the reason Buying was able to take away Xiao Yan so easily was because Xiao Yan forced the patriarch of the Sun family back and injured him. That was why he took the opportunity to take away Xiao Yan. Otherwise, it would be hard to say what would happen to the Sun family. In the city, everyone looked at Buying and Sun Shuo in the sky with a mocking expression. They boasted to each other about the shocking battle 3 months ago in the Cold Stream City. However, unknowingly, everyone's topic had quietly shifted from Buying and Sun Shuo to Xiao Yan. This made Xiao Yan, who was sitting cross-legged on the bed and using his soul power to probe the conversations of the people, feel embarrassed. He couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Xiao Yan wondered if the Xiao Yan was him or not. Even though this was not the first time he had heard such public opinion, it was still a little too exaggerated. In the sky, Sun Shuo and Buying had different expressions as they listened to the whispers from the crowd below. At this moment, the two of them had different thoughts in their hearts. This was especially so for Sun Shuo. After hearing the words of the people below, his entire face could be said to be extremely gloomy. The matter 3 months ago was still a great pain in Sun Shuo's heart. If it were not for Bai Ying's sudden intervention at that critical moment, Xiao Yan would have already been in the hands of his Sun family. However, the final result was something no one had expected. At this moment, when he thought of the scene when Bai Ying suddenly attacked that day, a nameless fire appeared in Sun Shuo's heart. His sharp and domineering gaze instantly pierced through the void like a sharp arrow and shot towards Bai Ying, who was also standing in the void. Humph. In the face of Sun Shuo's invisible pressure, Bai Ying was not afraid at all. He suddenly waved his sleeve and an invisible pressure immediately spread out in the void. At the same time, it easily blocked Sun Shuo's invisible force. After doing all this, Bai Ying put his hands behind his back and looked at Sun Shuo with an unhappy expression. He let out a soft snort and said in a low voice, "Patriarch Sun, I wonder what the meaning of this is?" As soon as the words that carried a faint pressure left his mouth, the crowd below immediately quieted down. Everyone looked towards the source of the voice and finally stopped on Bai Ying. Soon after, everyone could not help but sneer in their hearts. Bai Ying's words clearly had the meaning of asking the obvious. He clearly knew why Sun Shuo was angry, but he could still say such words to provoke him. Bai Ying's actions were clearly looking for trouble. Humph. Bai Ying. You are asking even though you already know the answer. If you had not created trouble by the side back then, Xiao Yan would have long since become something that belongs to my Sun clan. At this moment, you actually dare to speak such big words in front of me. How can I tolerate you? Sure enough, after Bai Ying's words sounded, the expression on Sun Shuo's face immediately became as gloomy as water. Sun Shuo's body suddenly shook as a powerful aura immediately swept out from his body. In the blink of an eye, the expressions of almost everyone in the sky and on the ground changed drastically at this moment. Numerous gazes that were filled with fear instantly looked toward Sun Shuo. At this moment, the latter suddenly waved his large hand and a terrifying Do-Chi light that contained the fury in his heart immediately smashed ruthlessly towards Bai Ying with a frightening aura that seemed to cover the sky. This attack was so frightening that it caused the complexions of the people in the city below to turn deathly pale. Even some 9-star half-martial emperors' complexions rapidly turned deathly pale after being struck by the might of this attack. An elite Do-Di was really this powerful. If such strength were to land on any Ban-Di in the city below, it would be sufficient to instantly kill him. Of course, this so-called Ban-Di naturally did not include Xiao Yan. After all, the current Xiao Yan was an elite Do-Di in everyone's hearts. Humph, Sun Shuo. Are you really so impatient to start a war with my Bai clan? Bai Ying coldly snorted. He was not afraid at all. His foot stomped on the empty air and a powerful Do-Chi instantly swept out. It transformed into a purple lightning dragon with a flickering lightning glow. In the blink of an eye, it violently collided with the light that was heading towards him. Bang! Immediately, an earth-shaking explosion sounded. Soon after, a powerful energy storm suddenly swept across the sky. The expressions on the faces of everyone in the city changed once again when they saw this scene. At this moment, within the two courtyards in the city, the two leaders of the Joie and Hua clan involuntarily squeezed their wrinkled old faces together at this moment. Their gazes were focused on the sky at this moment, and a deep solemnness was revealed in their deep eyes. Chapter 6:14. After the energy storm dissipated, many gazes once again landed on Sun Shuo and Bai Ying. Bai Ying's expression was cold and indifferent as he stared at Sun Shuo from the distant sky. The dou qi within his body quietly surged as he slowly clenched his hand under his sleeves. At the same time, Sun Shuo, who was standing in the empty space opposite him, also had a dark and cold face. An aura surged from his body, causing the surrounding empty space to fluctuate intensely. Although the power of the previous attack was not weak, the strength of the two of them were similar. Hence, the two of them were not injured. However, this caused the atmosphere in the square to immediately become tense. A thick smell of gunpowder lingered in the noses of everyone. Sun Shuo, do you really intend to fight until the sky turns dark with me? Bai Ying's eyes were dark and cold as he spoke in a low voice. The desolate ancient remains was about to open. Although he was not afraid of Sun Shuo, he did not wish to create too much trouble before that. What nonsense are you spouting? 3 months ago, you should have been prepared when you kidnapped Xiao Yan. Since you dared to snatch the prey of my Sun clan, I will make you pay the price today. Sun Shuo immediately snorted angrily when he heard Bai Ying's words. His body suddenly trembled and an afterimage was left on the spot. His body had already appeared in front of Bai Ying in an instant. His hand was tightly clenched into a fist as it ruthlessly smashed towards Bai Ying's head. Sun Shuo, you are really stubborn. If I had not kidnapped Xiao Yan in that big battle, your Sun clan would have been the one to suffer when that mysterious expert descended. It is fine if you do not thank me, but you actually dare to repay kindness with ingratitude. You really do not know what is good for you. Sun Shuo suddenly stepped forward. Bai Ying's expression also became cold. His body blocked the younger generation members of the clan behind him as he spat out some words in an icy tone. At the same time, the hand behind his back was suddenly lifted. With a twist of his wrist, his palm faced Sun Shuo in front of him as he ruthlessly swung his palm forward. Boom! With the bang, Bai Ying could not help but take half a step back. As he frowned slightly, his body suddenly shook, sending Sun Shuo flying. Afterwards, he glanced at the disciples of the clan behind him from the corner of his eye. Only after confirming that they had not been affected by the battle did he return his gaze with a sunken face. Sun Shuo, since you want to make a move, then Soon after, while Bai Ying's face was gloomy as he stared at Sun Shuo, who had been forced back, a young man in white robes beside him swiftly stepped forward. He used his hand to press down on Bai Ying's tightly clenched hand under his sleeve. Father, you can't. A low and deep voice that only the two of them could hear was stealthily transmitted into Bai Ying's ears. Soon after, Bai Ying's expression was slightly startled. He deeply inhaled a breath of air and nodded. The gloomy expression on his face gradually returned to normal. Their goal for coming to Shilin City this time was to obtain the desolate ancient ruins. Before that, they could not allow any mistakes to cause them to miss out on the treasures within the ruins. On the other side, Sun Shuo gritted his teeth hatefully when he saw Bai Ying withdraw his aura, and his expression was gloomy. Just when he was about to attack again, a young man in a white embroidered robe suddenly appeared by his side and stopped Sun Shuo from attacking again. Lord Father, it is still not the right time to act. Don't forget that there are still people from the Zhuo clan and the Hua clan below. These two clans are waiting for us to fight with the Bai clan. At that time, once both our clans are injured, the desolate ancient ruins will be occupied by those two clans. Hearing this, Sun Shuo seemed to have woken up from a dream and remembered the main goal of this trip. Even though there was still anger in his heart, he had to look at the big picture first. The enmity with the Bai family could only be temporarily pushed to the back. Bai family, Sun Shuo, will make you kneel before my Sun family sooner or later. And the Zhua and Hua families will not be let off either. After withdrawing his gaze, Sun Shua's face was still filled with resentment as he cursed. On the other side, Xiao Yan, who was currently sitting cross-legged on the bed, also slowly opened his eyes. He gently shrugged his shoulders. He originally thought that there would be a good show to watch. However, he did not expect that once the sons of the two families appeared, they would immediately stop it. Ugh, I thought that I could sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. I didn't expect that it would end like this. Xiao Yan somewhat lazily straightened his chest and leaped up from the bed. A thought passed through his mind and a large black robe immediately agglomerated and appeared. It wrapped around Xiao Yan's entire body, causing others to be unable to identify him. However, I heard that fellow calls Sun Shua father just now. Looks like that fellow is Sun Shua's son. Who, another Do Di. However, from the looks of his aura, he should have only broken through recently. This point is similar to that person from half a month ago. Under the probing of Xiao Yan's spiritual strength, the strength of Sun Shua's son was clearly that of an elite Do Di. Although his aura was not stable, one thing that could be confirmed was that he was indeed a one-star Do Di. When Xiao Yan compared it with the D calamity from half a month ago, he could roughly confirm that the D calamity should have been caused by the breakthrough of Sun Shua's son. It is really unexpected that the foundation of these three clans is really deep. They had actually forcefully pushed the strength of their sons to the Do Di class. However, the strange thing is that the Bai clan is clearly ranked third among the four great clans, suppressing the Sun clan by a head. Why is it that the strength of Bai Ying's son has not reached the Do Di class? Xiao Yan frowned slightly. A feeling of suspicion involuntarily rose in his heart. However, he quickly thought about it in his heart and could only push this reason to his training talent. Immediately, Xiao Yan ceased thinking about it. He pulled the black doping over his head and moved his feet, preparing to walk out. During the probing earlier, the strength of Sun Shua's son from the Sun clan, which was ranked last among the four great clans, had already reached the one-star Do Di class. On the other hand, the strength of Bai Ying's son from the Bai clan, which was ranked at the top, was only at the advanced 9-star Ban D class. There was a great distance between him and the Do Di class. This was also the reason why Xiao Yan felt curious about him in his heart. However, Gu Yu, who was within Xiao Yan's body, suddenly spoke just as he was about to lift his foot and walk to the door of the dormitory. He, brat, do you really think that the strength of that brat from the Bai clan is only that of a 9-star Ban D? Huh. Xiao Yan's hand, which was about to open the door, suddenly paused when he heard Gu Yu's words. Immediately, the expression on his face under the black doping changed slightly. His entire body paused in front of the door. Humph, that's right. That brat's strength is indeed only that of a 9-star Ban D on the surface. However, this should be because he has something on him that hides his aura. His true strength is not inferior to that brat from the Zhua clan. Gu Yu's tone contained a trace of seriousness. One had no choice but to pay attention to such a person. After Xiao Yan heard Gu Yu's words, his dark black eyes suddenly shrunk to the size of a needle tip. His heart also felt incomparably surprised. Even with his spiritual strength, he was unable to detect that fellow's true strength. This Bai clan had really hidden themselves very deeply. Xiao Yan finally exhaled a deep breath of air a moment later. His face revealed a grave expression. At the same time, he spoke to Gu Yu in his heart. Ugh. Old Gu, do you mean that his true strength is actually a 2-star Do Di? Chapter 6:15. In front of the door, Xiao Yan's face was stunned as he stood in the same spot. His pair of dark black eyes were filled with shock at this moment. He really did not expect that the young master of the Bai clan had actually hidden his strength. That fellow is actually a 2-star Do Di. Xiao Yan's heart tightened. In this way, the enemy that he would have to face would be even stronger than he had imagined. It was likely that this trip to the desolate ancient remains would be even more difficult. However, thinking about it from another angle, Xiao Yan had another thought. If it was really as Bai Ying had told him back then, that the Bai clan had a grudge with the Heavenly Sword sect. In that case, it would be reasonable for the young master of the Bai clan to hide his strength. If the Bai clan really wished to join hands with him, this trip to the desolate ancient remains would be much easier. At this moment, the two clans in the outside world also carried cold smiles as they slowly walked up to the sky from the city below when they saw Sun Shua stop. Cuckoo, the head of the Bai clan and the head of the Sun clan have also arrived. With the both of you around, this trip to the desolate ancient remains will be much more lively. Otherwise, wouldn't it be boring if there were only our two clans? Zhuo Bentang wore a fake smile as he stared at Bai Ying and Sun Shua in the sky. His shriveled hand fondled the white beard on his chin as he laughed. On the other side, Hua Ba from the Hua clan was also standing in the sky. A young man in a black robe was following beside him. This person was the eldest son of the Hua clan. He was also the other elite Do Di in the Hua clan's group this time around, other than Hua Ba. Haha, that's right. Elder Zhua is right. If the two of your clans did not participate in this trip to the desolate ancient remains, the Zhua clan would only need to be able to deal with me. The others would not be a concern. At that time, all the things in the desolate ancient remains would belong to the Zhua clan. Unfortunately, the two of you did not end up fighting. Elder Zhua must be feeling quite uncomfortable in his heart right now. Hua Ba stared at Zhuo Bentang with a mocking smile. His words did not leave any room for negotiation. This caused the expression on Zhuo Bentang's old face to immediately darken. Hua Ba's face still carried a cold smile in response. However, before he could open his mouth again, a young man in fluttering white clothes quickly stepped into the air. A pair of eyes that were as sharp as arrows instantly looked at Hua Ba. That gaze caused one's face to feel a piercing pain. It was as though a sharp arrow had pierced one's face. The moment the sharp gaze shot over, Hua Ba seemed to have sensed it and suddenly turned his head. A pair of overbearing eyes instantly stared in the direction of the gaze. Eighth Elder Hua is quite eloquent. With just a few simple words, you've managed to degrade my Zhua family to such an extent. The white-clothed young man had his hands behind his back as he stepped into the air with a calm expression. He gave off a refreshing and otherworldly feeling. However, the words that came out of his mouth were exceptionally cold, causing a chill to swiftly rise from the bottom of one's heart. When he heard the latter's cold words, Hua Ba did not dare to be careless. Although the young man in front of him was not as powerful as him, Hua Ba could not afford to underestimate him in the slightest due to his status. Why does the Crown Prince have to take it so seriously? I was just joking. You don't have to take it seriously. When that time comes, I believe that both our families will fight for it based on our own abilities. However, right now, our four great families have finally reunited after so many years. The atmosphere can't be so solemn every time, right? Hua Ba laughed as his gaze quickly swept across the entire place. In the end, it stopped on the young man in the brocade robe beside Sun Shua. Hua Ba's eyes brightened as he once again laughed out loud. His gaze stared at the young man in the brocade robe as he laughed out loud. This must be the Crown Prince of the Sun Clan, Sun Hanshi. I have always heard that the Crown Prince has always focused on training and rarely shows himself in front of others. It is unexpected that you have already trained to the Do Di class. Looking at your aura, it is likely that the D calamity earlier was your D calamity, right? When Hua Ba's words were uttered, everyone's eyes successfully shifted from him to the brocade-robed young man, Sun Hanshi. Sun Hanshi's expression did not change when he sensed the gazes that everyone had shot over. He slowly swept his gaze over everyone present. Finally, his eyes met the eyes of the Crown Prince of the Zhua clan. Zhuo Lin. Sun Hanshi's eyes narrowed into a straight line as he softly spoke with an extremely grave expression. Zhuo Lin was the eldest son of the Zhua clan. At the same time, he was also the person with the greatest training talent among the younger generation of the four great clans. At such a young age, he had already become a two-star Do Di. It was rumored that he was not only the future clan head of the Zhua clan, but he was also one of the few core disciples of the Sky Sword sect in the future. If he were to grow up, the Sky Sword sect would definitely rely on him in the future. This also caused the other three clans' crown princes to have some ill feelings toward him. However, due to his frightening training talent, no one had been able to replace his position until now. You are no good. Sun Hanxi's gaze was exchanged with Zhuo Lin's light and disdainful words. Compared to him, Sun Hanxi had only just broken through to the Do D class. On the other hand, he had already reached the level of a 2-star Do D 2 years ago. There was no comparison between the two of them. Even the future Sun Hanxi would definitely not be a match for Zhuo Lin. Sun Hanxi's expression changed. His face revealed a furious expression. However, Zhuo Lin turned his gaze and looked at the crown prince of the Hua clan. Compared to the former, the latter's strength had already reached the level of an advanced 1-star Do D. Even though this was the case, he was still met with a cold and disdainful word from Zhuo Lin. You are also no good. Upon hearing this, the expression of the black-robed young man changed. However, in the end, he still inhaled a deep breath of air and calmed down. In the end, a strange icy glint flashed across the depths of his eyes when he looked at Zhuo Lin. Immediately, Zhuo Lin's gaze once again turned. Finally, it arrived at the Bai clan. The expression on Bai Ying's face changed when Zhuo Lin's gaze shot over. The eyes of the white-robed young man by the side narrowed. The Do Qi within his body was swiftly withdrawn into the vortex space as he prepared to face this fellow in front of him. However, when Zhuo Lin's gaze had just arrived at the position of the Bai clan, the members of the Bai clan had already made their preparations. However, Zhuo Lin's gaze skipped over Bai Ying and the white-robed young man beside him in front of everyone's stunned eyes. Ugh, the appearance of this scene did not only cause everyone in the city to be stunned. Even Bai Ying, the young man beside him, and Xiao Yan, who was currently in the house, were also stunned. Immediately, a smile rose within the hearts of the few of them. Chapter 6:16. The commotion during the day finally ended with Zhuo Lin's appearance. After the short meeting between the 4 great clans, they each went into hiding in Shilin City. With the remaining 5 days, no one seemed to want to cause any more trouble. The atmosphere in the city also quietened down as the few forces calmed down. Under the night sky, the bustling city gradually regained its calm. Perhaps there were some black shadows flickering in the darkness, but they did not make the slightest sound. It was as if all the sounds they made were swallowed up by the pitch-black night. Although the day had passed, the night in Shilin City was not as peaceful as it looked on the surface. Under the shroud of the night, not only did the magical beasts outside the city awaken, but it was also the time for some powerful people to meet. There was no wind tonight. The bright moon hung high in the sky, and the bright night sky was dotted with stars. It was as if the Milky Way covered the horizon. On a wide street within the city, the street was as bright as snow under the bright moon. Without the hustle and bustle of the day, this place appeared incomparably quiet at this moment. Adding the radiance of the bright moon, it caused this place to have a different kind of scenery. On this street, at this moment, a black-robed young man was holding the back of his head with both hands. A bored smile hung on the corner of his mouth. Under the brilliance of the bright moon, his originally pitch-black eyes were reflecting a bright light. The young man's eyes stared at the huge silver moon in the sky. Under such a strange scene, the moon seemed exceptionally bright and huge, as if it was right in front of his eyes. At this moment, the black-robed young man's eyes were fixed on the silver moon that seemed to be right in front of him. Out of nowhere, a beautiful figure dressed in green with a faint smile on her lips appeared in the silver moon. Gradually, the black-robed young man's vision was replaced by this beautiful figure. The thoughts in his mind also sank into deep memories and longing. It was a long while later before Xiao Yan finally slowly recovered. He opened his mouth slightly but helplessly closed it again. Soon after, another extremely alluring lady appeared in Xiao Yan's mind in the midst of his memories, which were filled with longing. Just like the former, she also appeared in Xiao Yan's mind. Ugh! I wonder how Sun Er and Kai Lin have been all these years. That little girl Xiao Xiao has likely grown up. Back then, I told her that she would leave the clan to train after she matured. I wonder how she is now. His forward footsteps slowly came to a stop. Xiao Yan lifted his eyes and looked at the vast starry sky above his head. Both of his eyes were filled with memories. The people and matters of the past flew past one by one in his mind. His father, teacher, the little fairy doctor, Ziyan, Yun, and even his friends from the Jia Nan Academy. The appearance of these people and the things that happened with him repeatedly replayed Xiao Yan's mind. Of him. It was as if it had happened yesterday, yet today, ugh, his mouth once again emitted a helpless sigh. Xiao Yan stood in the same spot. Both of his eyes were slowly shut. Numerous thoughts swiftly rotated in his mind. It was a long while later before Xiao Yan gradually withdrew them. His mind also gradually recovered. Soon after, just as Xiao Yan was preparing to leave this place, the movement caused by the collision of two dou qis in the dark night was swiftly discovered by Xiao Yan, who was an alchemist. Of course, a battle that occurred in the dark night was not considered strange. If it was any other time, Xiao Yan would definitely ignore it. However, this time around, Xiao Yan could clearly sense the two auras that were currently colliding. Today, Xiao Yan had sensed them during the day. Those auras belonged to Sun Hanshi of the Sun clan and the heir of the Bai clan. Under the illumination of the silver moon, Xiao Yan's eyes that reflected the bright light slowly narrowed. With a thought, the black robe on his body immediately wrapped around his entire body. In an instant, Xiao Yan's aura had already been completely concealed. His body flashed and he instantly used the sky extinction step. Xiao Yan, who was still standing in the middle of the street a moment ago, had already turned into a cool breeze and disappeared in the blink of an eye. On the other side, deep within a remote alley. At this moment, two human figures were standing on one side. Both of them were staring at each other with hostility. The one standing on the left was the heir of the Sun clan, Sun Hanshi. The one opposite him was the heir of the Bai clan. Baijan, since it is inconvenient for the elders of our clans to fight, tonight, the two of us will help our clans determine who is superior. The corner of Sun Hanshi's mouth was lifted into a cold smile. His feet gently stomped on the ground. Immediately, an icy blue dou qi swiftly surged out from his body. At this moment, the temperature of the space where the two of them were located swiftly dropped. Cuckoo, ever since I have advanced to the dou di class, I have not had a proper fight with anyone. Today, I will use you as a test. Sun Hanshi's expression was cold and indifferent as he stared at Baijan. He lifted his right hand gently. Immediately, an icy blue dou qi swiftly agglomerated at his fingertip. In the blink of an eye, it agglomerated into an icicle that was a couple of inches long. The icicle, which was even sharper than the tip of a needle, was suspended in midair and pointed directly at Baijan. Once Sun Hanshi's raised hand was lowered, the icicle would instantly pierce toward the former. Baijan's gaze stared intently at the icicle with a sharp aura. His eyes narrowed and a grave expression was revealed on his cold face. His feet involuntarily took half a step back. After which, he raised his eyes and looked at Sun Hanshi. He coldly said, "Sun Hanshi, is this the reason why you have called me out today?" "That's right." Sun Hanshi similarly replied with an icy cold tone. At the same time, his index finger rotated under the icicle. The icicle emitted a bone-chilling cold air that caused people to feel a chill strike their backs when they saw it. "You are currently an elite dou di, yet you are here to humiliate me, a ban di. Don't you think that your actions are very embarrassing?" Baijan's gaze was grave. A layer of purple-colored lightning lingered over the surface of his body as he spat out the words from his mouth. He was constantly on guard against Sun Hanshi's sudden attack. "Cuckoo, Baijan, don't you find it laughable when you say such words in front of me? Although there is a great gap between our strengths, we are of the same generation. I am merely representing my clan to spar with you. As long as I do not die, I believe that your father will not dare to do anything to me." Sun Hanshi's mouth was filled with a cold smile when he heard Baijan's words. It seemed that he had already expected the latter's words. Baijan was just about to move when he saw this. However, Sun Hanshi, who was in front of him, was one step faster than him. With a wave of his finger, the icicle immediately penetrated through the air like a sharp arrow. It carried a sharp whistling sound as it shot towards Baijan. Baijan's expression suddenly changed when he saw Sun Hanshi suddenly attack. He knew in his heart that Sun Hanshi had come prepared. His body hurriedly withdrew when his expression changed. However, he had only taken a couple of steps back when the wall behind him blocked him. Damn it! Baijan's face became even more furious when he was unable to withdraw. He waved his large hand and a purple-colored lightning glow immediately shot out from his palm. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into a long lightning spear. Baijan's wrist abruptly shook as the long spear entered his hand. An enormous force shot out. Soon after, the sharp spear tip that was agglomerated from Dochi violently collided with the icicle that was coming toward him. Bang! However, Sun Hanshi, who was currently an elite Do-D, possessed a strength that was far from what Baijan could compare with. That icicle merely made contact with Baijan's long spear before the strength on the icicle violently shattered the long spear in an extremely overbearing manner in an unstoppable manner. The cold smile on the corner of Sun Hanshi's mouth widened when he saw this scene. On the other hand, the long spear in Baijan's hand was shattered inch by the icicle that was piercing toward him. At the same time that he was furious in his heart, he was forced to release the shaft of the spear in his hand. His body swiftly dodged to the side while his palm was suddenly thrown forward. Lightning covered it and flashed. Soon after, it once again collided with the icicle. Bang! An intense rumbling sound was emitted from this area where no one was present. A powerful Do-Chi wave suddenly swept through the alley. Immediately, the sound of a wall collapsing could be heard. The house behind Baijan where he was standing earlier had actually collapsed with a loud bang. Baijan's body was already buried within it. Haha, Baijan, looks like your Bai clan will be stepped on by my Sun clan sooner or later. Sun Hanshi's face was filled with a ferocious smile. He rotated his wrist and clenched his hand into a fist. Ice-cold Do-Chi swiftly agglomerated in his hand. At the same time, numerous icicles were swiftly formed in the sky above the ruins. In an instant, a countless number of icicles were formed in a densely packed manner. All of them were like stalagmites that pointed their sharp ends toward the ruins below. Soon after, a thought passed through Sun Hanshi's mind. In an instant, a countless number of icicles shot out at the same time. They fell like raindrops and violently pierced into the ruins below. Humph humph. Sun Hanshi involuntarily let out a cold laugh when he saw that there was no aura of resistance being emitted from the ruins. Soon after, the expression on his face instantly changed. At a certain spot in the ruins in front of him, a pile of ruins that had been buried by bricks was suddenly blasted apart by an aura. Rock fragments shot out. Only then did Baijan, who was lying under the ruins, turn his head around. His face was covered in blood as he looked at the current Sun Hanshi. His eyes were filled with fury and resentment. Sun Han Shi. Baijan's voice was hoarse as he spat out the name of the former, which he wished he could shatter into pieces. His entire body trembled. Both of his hands forcefully supported himself on the ground as he slowly climbed up. Sun Hanshi parted his mouth and smiled when he saw this weak manner of Baijan. His dark and cold smile caused one's heart to feel extremely terrified. Soon after, Sun Hanshi's feet suddenly stomped on the ground. His body instantly leaped into the air. His body twisted in the air and immediately stepped heavily on the back of Baijan, who was about to get up at this moment. Bang! Following an intense explosion, rock fragments shot out. Baijan's body was violently stepped on by Sun Hanshi. A frightening huge force instantly poured out. Dust flew and numerous cracks, which were as thick as a person's thigh, swiftly spread around Baijan's body like a spider web. Ugh! Under Sun Hanshi's feet, Baijan's mouth emitted a painful groan. His body trembled as he attempted to struggle once again. When the former saw this, his nose emitted a cold snort. He frowned and his body leaned forward slightly. At the same time, the foot that was stepping on Baijan's body suddenly exerted force. A frightening huge force poured out once again. With a bang, the ground around the two of them suddenly collapsed. Baijan's body also sank downwards. Humph humph, Baijan, compared to you standing up, I prefer the way you are being stepped on by me. Sun Hanshi looked down from above. The foot that was stepping on Baijan's body exerted even more force. Baijan's mouth involuntarily emitted a painful groan after receiving such a serious injury. At the same time, bright red fresh blood continuously surged out from his mouth. His originally pale face also became increasingly pale at this moment. Humph humph. Sun Hanshi let out a cold laugh. His foot was slowly lifted into the air. His expression immediately turned cold as he once again viciously stomped down on Baijan. Little thing from the Sun clan, get lost. You dare to hurt my son. Do you believe that the old me will cripple your Do-chi? However, at this moment, a furious cry that was filled with fury was suddenly transmitted from the sky. At the same time, an invisible wind suddenly swept out. In the blink of an eye, it had already arrived in front of Sun Hanshi. This sudden attack did not cause much of a change in Sun Hanshi's expression. Instead, he let out a cold laugh and increased the force of his foot. Bang! The next moment, an earth-shaking bang suddenly exploded in front of Sun Hanshi. This attack of Bai Ying's was forcefully blocked by another force that had suddenly appeared. At the same time, the remnant Do-chi swept out and forced Sun Hanshi, who was about to land on Baijan, back. Humph. Bai Ying, during the day, I gave in to you on account that you are also from the 4 great clans. Why? Are you still thinking of touching my son now? Sun Shua's body slowly surfaced on a roof outside of the ruins after his cold laughter sounded. His expression was dark and cold as his eyes stared at the roof on the opposite side. Bai Ying, who was wearing a white robe, was leisurely standing at that spot. Sun Shua. Your son has seriously injured my son with the strength of a Do-di. He must pay the price today. Bai Ying cried out in a hoarse voice. At this moment, it appeared as though the entire Shilin city was trembling. The originally quiet night had also become noisy because of this unexpected change. Numerous people with various emotions flew out of their houses. Their gazes were all different as they looked at the source of the furious cry. When everyone realized that the person was actually the head of the Bai clan, Bai Ying, the expression on everyone's faces involuntarily changed. The curses that had reached their mouths were forcefully swallowed back into their stomachs. Ha ha ha, Bai Ying. Ha, Bai Ying, why are you so angry? My son, Han Shi, only wanted to exchange pointers with your crown prince. His skills were not as good as his opponent's, so a loss is a loss. At worst, he can just lower his head and admit defeat. Han Shi did not want to underestimate his opponent, so he used all his strength to show respect to his opponent. Perhaps he used too much strength, but you can't blame my son for that. Sun Shua's face was cold. His eyes stared at Bai Ying on the opposite side. After sensing the violent aura on the latter's body, the Do-chi within Sun Shua's body was swiftly raised. Thus, Sun Shua would be able to react in time if Bai Ying made any move. Humph. Only a little heavy-handed? He is a dignified Do-di. Would it not be easy for him to defeat my son? Why would he need to use his full strength? He is doing this on purpose. He purposely wants to seriously injure my son and prevent my son from entering the desolate ancient remains. Bai Ying appeared to be gnashing his teeth. The fury in his eyes was about to spew out. His muscular body involuntarily trembled intensely. A low, hoarse roar was emitted from his throat. Powerful Do-chi continued to surge in the empty space around him. The invisible empty space had already reached the verge of collapse under the pressure of Bai Ying's aura. Ha, since this is the case, at the very most, I will get Han Shi to apologize to your son. Of course, if he admits that he is just a useless person who cannot achieve great things, Sun Shua can still compensate him with 3 tier 3 medicinal pills. Sun Shua's face was filled with a mocking smile. He ignored Bai Ying's gloomy water-like face. His eyes slowly shifted downwards and finally landed on Baijan, who was lying in the ruins with a weak aura all over his body. Cough cough, it was a long while later when Baijan finally climbed up from the ruins with great difficulty in a weak manner. There was even a layer of sand on his bloody face. At this moment, Baijan appeared to be incomparably weak. He first slowly lifted his head and glanced at his father, Bai Ying, who was standing on the roof. After which, he looked at Sun Shua and clenched his teeth. Finally, he violently shook his head. I will never admit defeat. All right, since nephew Baijan is unwilling to admit defeat, his courage is commendable. By being able to possess such courage, nephew Baijan is really not an ordinary person. Hanshi, you have hurt someone. Moreover, it is nephew Baijan. Why are you still not apologizing to him? Otherwise, if his father comes looking for you, even I will have a difficult time. Even at this moment, Sun Shua did not forget to mock Bai Ying again. When Sun Hanshi heard this, he coldly smiled. His gaze immediately turned, and he stared at Baijan with a sneer on his face as he coldly laughed. Brother Baijan, I am sorry. I was careless earlier and was not careful. I am sorry. Although it was an apology, the tone of his voice was filled with cold laughter and disdain. Sun Hanshi turned around to leave after his words sounded. At this moment, Baijan suddenly opened his mouth. Remember, the humiliation today will be repaid in the future. Chapter 617. Under the night sky, Western Lin City was no longer quiet because of Sun Hanshi and Baijan. After the crowd around the ruins left, the people in the city could no longer fall asleep. The pitch-black city immediately became brightly lit. Under the moonlight, the atmosphere in the city gradually became lively. Almost everyone was talking about the incident that happened between Sun Hanshi and Baijan. On the other side, a human figure wrapped in a black robe slowly walked out from a spot not far from the ruins after the Sun and Bai clans had left. The human figure slowly raised his head. The bright moonlight seeped through the gaps of the black robe, illuminating a pair of mirror-like dark black eyes under the black robe that reflected the moonlight. Through the somewhat weak moonlight, one could vaguely see that under the black robe was a young face. From the looks of it, who else could it be other than Xiao Yan? Xiao Yan gently raised his eyes. He opened his dark black eyes and looked in the direction that Baijan's group had left. After which, he looked to the opposite side. That direction was where Sun Shua and Sun Hanshi had left. The corner of the mouth under the black robe was lifted into a cold smile. At the same time, Xiao Yan involuntarily felt surprised for Baijan. Based on what Guyu had said, Baijan's true strength was that of a genuine 2-star Do Di. This kind of strength was not inferior to the heir of the Zhuo clan. However, in order to hide his true strength, Baijan was able to remain calm in the face of Sun Hanshi's humiliation. He ended up being viciously beaten by someone who was clearly weaker than him. Even with Xiao Yan's experience, it was likely that there were only a handful of people who could compare with Baijan and Xiao Yan's memories. Compared to Baijan, Sun Hanshi was an extremely domineering person. He had only just broken through to the Do Di class, but he was already so arrogant when he did things. With the strength of a Do Di, he randomly bullied those who were weaker than him. Xiao Yan was curious. What would Sun Hanshi think if he were to learn of Baijan's true strength? However, Xiao Yan began to feel increasingly curious about the Bai clan when he thought about it. From the looks of it, it seemed that the Sun clan was unaware that Baijan had reached the Do Di class. From the sudden appearance of Sun Shua and Bai Ying tonight, it was clear that they had been lying in wait for a long time. Sun Hanshi had not only intentionally injured Baijan, but also wanted to use this opportunity to probe Baijan's true strength. Unfortunately, Baijan had been forcefully enduring Sun Hanshi's ferocious attacks from beginning to end. No matter how Sun Hanshi forced him, Baijan had been forcefully enduring. As a result, even when Bai Ying appeared in the end, Baijan did not display his true strength. Baijan would rather be seriously injured by Sun Hanshi than reveal his strength. From this point, it seemed that the Bai clan was intentionally hiding something from the Heavenly Sword sect. Even the other 3 large clans under them did not know about it. At the same time, the thing that piqued Xiao Yan's interest the most was that while the Bai clan and the Sun clan were arguing, Xiao Yan had secretly sensed 2 other auras observing them. There was no need to think too much to guess who the owners of these two auras were. They were naturally the two leading elders from the Zhuo clan and the Hua clan, Zhuo Benteng and Hua Ba. From the beginning, the attention of these two people had been placed on Bai Ying and Bai Zhan. Clearly, they were also very curious about Bai Zhan's true strength. After all, they were all part of the four large clans. Moreover, they were ranked third among the four large clans. Currently, even the Sun clan, which was ranked last, had a young master whose strength had already reached the Do D class. On the other hand, the Bai clan was indeed suspicious. Cuckoo, Xiao Yan let out a soft cold laugh. No matter how much trouble the four large clans caused, it had nothing to do with him. Currently, Xiao Yan was only concerned about the matter of the desolate ancient ruins. Currently, there were only 5 days left until the opening of the desolate ancient ruins. During these 5 days, Xiao Yan needed to raise his condition to its peak. Only in this way would he be able to obtain a share of the loot during this trip to the desolate ancient ruins. Xiao Yan raised his head and looked at the bright night sky. A beautiful woman appeared in his mind. His heart involuntarily became a little absent-minded. Immediately, he inhaled a deep breath of air. The black robe covered a small portion of Xiao Yan's face that was revealed. After which, his body, which was standing on the spot, trembled slightly. Soon after, Xiao Yan's body instantly disappeared from this place. On the other side, Sun Shua and his son, who had just returned from the Sun clan's encampment, had smiles all over their faces. This was not just because Sun Hanshi had beaten up Bai Zhan. Haha, Hanshi, father is now almost certain that the strength of that little bastard from the Bai clan has not reached the Do D class. After returning to the living room of the encampment, Sun Shua sat down on a chair. The smile on his face was not hidden at all. The joy in his heart was completely displayed on his face. Haha, that's right. Father, during the process of me attacking just now, that fellow did not even have the slightest ability to retaliate. He could not even block an ordinary attack of mine and was seriously injured by me 3 times in a row. The current Bai Zhan is likely to be seriously injured. I believe that he, the young master of the Bai clan, will definitely not be able to participate in this trip to the desolate ancient ruins. Sun Hanshi, who was seated opposite Sun Shua, similarly revealed a cold smile on his face. The corner of his mouth was lifted into a mocking smile. His words were filled with disdain and ridicule. At the same time, within the Hua clan, Hua Ba and the young master of the Hua clan were standing on the same roof. The two of them also firmly believed that Bai Zhan's strength was a 9-star band D. After all, there was almost no elite Do D who could endure such humiliation. To be stepped on by someone whose strength was inferior to theirs. This kind of humiliation was something that no one could endure. However, the atmosphere in the Zhuo clan's encampment was different from the previous 2 clans. Zhuo Benteng's old face contained a smile. His figure appeared respectful as he stood in the small courtyard. In front of him was a spotless white-clothed Zhuo Lin, who was seated beside a stone table in the courtyard. His hand was gently lifting a lustrous jade cup. His sharp eyes stared at the jade cup in his hand. His face revealed an expression of deep thought. You said that Bai Zhan was crushed by Sun Hanshi? Yes, young master. Zhuo Benteng's face was respectful as he replied. Although the strength of Zhuo Lin in front of him could not compare with him, the latter's position caused the few upper echelon elders in the clan to have no choice but to treat him with respect. Even though Zhuo Benteng was the leader of the Zhuo clan in front of everyone during the day, he knew that the true decision-making power of their group was in Zhuo Lin's hands. Did he resist? Zhuo Lin gently placed down the jade cup in his hand and asked faintly. Yes, he did. However, in front of Sun Hanshi, it was useless. Zhuo Benteng told the young man in front of him all the information that he had found out. The latter would occasionally frown and nod his head. A moment later, Zhuo Lin finally opened his mouth and asked. What do you think of Bai Zhan's strength? Zhuo Benteng involuntarily raised his eyebrows when he heard that Zhuo Lin had actually passed this question to him. He felt surprised in his heart. Could it be that his young master was still doubting Bai Zhan's true strength? Even though he was doubtful in his heart, Zhuo Bentang did not dare to act rashly in front of Zhuolin. He could only carefully consider in his heart before answering honestly. Young master, this subordinate thinks that Baijian's strength is indeed that of a 9-star half-martial emperor. Otherwise, if even you think so, then I'm sure that the Hua clan and the Sun clan would also think so. They both think that Baijian is only a 9-star half-martial emperor. Zhuolin's feminine slender fingers lightly tapped on the ice-cold table. The words that came out of his mouth caused Zhuo Bentang, who was standing respectfully to the side, to feel as if he had suddenly woken up from a dream. The expression on his face rapidly changed. Immediately, an extremely shocked expression emerged from the bottom of his heart. If it was truly as his young master had judged, then this Baijian was truly too frightening. To be able to endure being forcibly stepped on by someone whose strength was clearly inferior to his, how frightening was Baijian's temperament. If it was truly like this, then when Baijian displayed his strength in the future, it was likely that even the 4 great sects would be shocked. Young master, this shouldn't be possible, right? At this very moment, even with Zhuo Bentang's cunning temperament, he could not help but feel a wave of shock in his heart. At the same time that he looked at Zhuolin, his mouth involuntarily spat out doubtful words. Hearing that, Zhuolin's cold and indifferent expression did not fluctuate much. He only slowly inhaled a breath of air. After thinking for a while in his heart, he once again asked Zhuo Bentang, "Let me ask you. How many years has it been since Baijian became an advanced 9-star half-martial emperor?" Hearing those words, Zhuo Bentang's expression was slightly startled. Immediately, he rotated his eyes and hurriedly replied, "Young master, it has already been 13 years. Zhuolin gently nodded his head. He softly repeated Zhuo Bentang's words. After that, he softly muttered, 13 years? 13 years, huh? I also used 11 years to raise my strength from a 9-star half-martial emperor to a 2-star Dodi. Once these words were spoken, Zhuo Bentang by the side immediately appeared to have thought of something. The pupils of his eyes suddenly shrunk and an expression of disbelief was revealed on his old face. The breathing from his nose became slightly sluggish at this moment. The shock in his heart could not be described with words. Young master's words, could it be that, however, immediately following this, Zhuolin suddenly raised his hand and stopped Zhuo Bentang's action of continuing to speak. At the same time, a clear and cold voice was once again spat out from his mouth. Don't rashly jump to conclusions about anything. Perhaps, I am simply thinking too much. However, you only need to remember that you must be careful of the Bai and Hua clans. As for that Sun clan, they are nothing more than a group of useless wild dogs. Raise them when you need them, and slaughter them when you don't need them. Once these words were spoken, Zhuo Bentang by the side immediately bowed and nodded. Although Zhuolin's words sounded extremely calm, the chilling killing intent hidden within them caused one's hair to stand on end. Even Zhuo Bentang, who was also a member of the same clan, was no exception to this. The Bai clan's encampment. There was not a single person in the quiet courtyard. Although this was the Bai clan's encampment, everyone in the Bai clan had been ordered to stay in their rooms. Without the clan leader's summons, no one was allowed to take even half a step out of their rooms. Hence, even though the commotion outside had been great, all the members of the Bai clan could only stare blankly from within their rooms. Even though they wanted to investigate, they were blocked by the aura that enveloped the courtyard. Helpless, the group of Bai clan members could only obediently stay in their rooms. At this moment, the blood-covered Baijian and the gloomy-faced Baiing were seated in a spacious hall that was empty of people in the courtyard. After swallowing a Tier 3 medicinal pill, the injuries on Baijian's body had clearly recovered. The bleeding wounds on his body had already stopped, and the dark red blood swiftly condensed into a layer of blood scabs. Baijian's silly white face also recovered its rosy color. Jean, are you all right? The atmosphere in the hall was silent for a long time. Only then did Baiing open his mouth and ask Baijian with an ugly expression. Father, don't worry. I'm fine. I only suffered some superficial wounds. As for the rest, with the medicinal pill, it's nothing. Hearing Bai Ying's slightly complicated tone, Bai Zhan chuckled and said with an indifferent expression. Zhan, this is all your father's fault. If I didn't insist that you hide your strength, how could that little bastard from the Sun clan be your match? Bai Ying glanced at Bai Zhan and slowly lowered his head. His face was filled with guilt. Father, why are you sad? You should be happy. It doesn't matter that I was beaten up by that guy. Most importantly, I believe that apart from the Zhuo clan, the other two clans already believe that my true strength is that of a 9-star half-martial emperor. Hearing Bai Zhan's words, Bai Ying slowly frowned. Indeed, it was as Bai Zhan had said. Of the 4 great clans, the other 2 were easy to deal with. However, the Zhuo clan, especially the Zhuo clan's heir, Zhuo Lin, was very suspicious and observant of everything. Even if the Bai clan's trick could easily fool the Sun clan and Hua clan, it would still be very difficult for them to get past Zhuo Lin. The Zhuo clan is merely relying on the might of the Heavenly Sword sect. In the end, it's nothing more than a dog under the Heavenly Sword sect's feet. Once the Heavenly Sword sect falls, let's see who your Zhuo clan can use as protection. Bai Ying's eyes narrowed as he fiercely slammed his hand on the armrest of his chair. At the same time, wood chips exploded as he slowly spoke those cold words. The night was still fine and the city below had gradually returned to its calm state. After returning to his residence, Xiao Yan heavily lay down on his bed. His normally tense body had completely relaxed. In just a short moment, he had sunk into his dreams. In the next few days, more and more experts arrived in Shilin City. The crowded city could be said to be overcrowded. As for the 4 great clans, they didn't take a single step out of their homes. They were completely entrenched and quiet. Until the 5th day, the day when the desolate ancient ruins opened. Chapter 618. When the first ray of morning light pierced through the sky and landed on the silent land, the darkness of the night was completely expelled in the blink of an eye. The central world was awakened from the night. Countless living creatures were awakened at this moment. At the same time, the figures hiding in the dark corners quietly concealed themselves. Shilin City, which had been silent for an entire night, was awakened the moment the sun shone down. Numerous figures impatiently scuttled out from various parts of the city and flew into the sky. Their eyes were fiery hot as they looked towards the south outside the city. That was the direction of the Shilin mountain range. In 4 different directions within the city, the members of the 4 great clans also left their respective encampments one after another and flew into the sky. Many pairs of eyes were like the people around them as they looked towards the southern horizon. At this moment, Xiao Yan, who had slept for 5 days, finally woke up in a daze from his bed. His eyes, which were in a deep sleep, slowly opened. Immediately, the glaring sunlight shot into his eyes. Immediately, the tiredness from his 5 days of deep sleep quickly disappeared like the receding tide. Xiao Yan's pair of slightly lost eyes also regained their calmness in an instant. They were like a deep spring, dark and deep. After waking up, Xiao Yan's body shook slightly and he successfully got up. At the same time, a huge spiritual strength swiftly swept out and observed the various movements within Shilin City. Looks like it's time for the desolate ancient ruins to open. Xiao Yan muttered softly in his mouth. He was surprised that he had slept for 5 days in one go. However, after waking up, Xiao Yan's mental state was completely at its peak. Additionally, Xiao Yan's strength had only increased recently. It could be said that the current Xiao Yan was at his peak in all aspects. Under this condition, Xiao Yan was even confident that he could easily face a Do Di who had just broken through. Huff. Spirit gathering fruit, I'm coming. Xiao Yan once again muttered in his mouth. His body flashed and disappeared from the room the next moment. In the outside world, Xiao Yan, who had revealed his body, was covered by a dark black robe in the sky. The glaring sunlight mercilessly fell. However, when it shone on the large black robe that Xiao Yan was wearing, it seemed to have been thrown into an endless void. The glaring light was instantly swallowed. This scene also caused some of the Ban Di experts, who had coincidentally passed by Xiao Yan, to involuntarily change their expressions. One after another, they threw strange gazes at Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan's eyes, Xiao Yan chose to ignore their gazes. With the black robes, Xiao Yan's eyes, Xiao Yan's eyes. Of the 4 great clans. Let's go. Today, it's time for us to experience the desolate ancient remains. Hua Ba from the Hua clan laughed out loud. His gaze swept across the group of Hua clan members behind him. Soon after, he did not hold back. His body moved and he swiftly flew towards the Shilin mountain range. Once the members of the Hua clan had flown some distance away, the members of the Zhua clan did not stand on ceremony. With Zhua Bentang leading them, a group of more than 10 people moved and flew towards the Shilin mountain range at a distance away from the Hua clan. Afterwards, the head of the Bai clan, Bai Ying, viciously glared at the Sun clan members. His eyes were filled with fury. Soon after, he turned his head and hatefully said, "Let's go." Then, he led the group of Bai clan members behind him and followed closely behind. Among the Sun clan members, Sun Shua and Sun Hanshi by the side swept past all the members of the Bai clan. Only when they did not see Bai Zhan's figure did they smile coldly. They raised their heads and waved their hands to the members of the Sun clan behind them. After which, they also moved. Following the departure of the 4 great clans, the other people in Shilin city also flew together at this moment. Immediately, numerous Do Chi light pillars shot to the sky. An enormous human flow surged in the sky as they majestically flew in the direction of the Shilin mountain range. Looking from a distance, such an enormous human flow appeared as though an enormous army was sweeping through the sky. Wherever the crowd passed, the mountain forest below appeared to be covered by a dark cloud. The magical beasts that were originally quietly resting within the mountain forest were also frightened by this earth-shaking aura until they fled in all directions. Following the departure of the thousands of Bandi experts from the Shilin mountain range, this enormous mountain range had completely descended into panic at this moment. Numerous human figures swiftly fled and hid within the mountain range. They were not real humans. Instead, they were Bandi class magical beasts that had transformed into humans after their strength had reached the Bandi class. However, it was because of this that these Bandi class magical beasts, who were usually filled with killing intent, involuntarily felt a wave of fear in their hearts at this moment when they saw the enormous human flow in the sky, which was like a cluster of dark clouds. Moreover, other than the Bandi class, there were also super experts at the Do Di class among this group of people. Xiao Yan had been following this enormous human flow along the way. The people from the 4 great clans were leading the way from a distance. This caused the magical beasts in the mountain range below to scatter in all directions before they arrived. During the flight, Xiao Yan looked at the familiar mountain range below. He involuntarily curled his mouth helplessly. He had stayed in this place for a couple of months during the past couple of months. He could be said to be extremely familiar with the terrain. However, he did not expect that the so-called desolate ancient remains would actually be located deep within the Shilin mountain range. 4 hours later, this vast and mighty human army finally arrived at their destination, the entrance to the desolate ancient remains, as they flew without any scruples. However, when Xiao Yan saw the familiar scene in the mountain range below, his dark black eyes under the cover of the black robe suddenly shrunk. A surprise immediately rose within his heart. He did not expect that the entrance to the desolate ancient remains would actually be here. Everyone's gaze lowered. At this moment, what appeared in front of everyone was a vast and boundless lake. The lake was so big that one could not see the end of it with a glance. The strangest thing was that at this moment, the entire lake revealed a blood-like scarlet color. It looked extremely frightening. The air was filled with a bloody stench that caused one to feel nauseous. When everyone in the sky saw the blood-colored lake below, everyone's eyes similarly revealed a shocked expression. In their hearts, it was even more difficult to imagine that this scarlet lake was actually dyed by fresh blood. At this moment, the shock in Xiao Yan's heart could not be any greater. This was because this blood-colored lake was where the narwhal snake's lair was located. Chapter 619. How can this be? It is actually here, among the crowd. Xiao Yan, who was covered by a black robe, tightly knitted his brows. He had never imagined that the entrance to the desolate ancient ruins would actually be here. Although Xiao Yan did not have a good impression of the narwhal snake, he did not reject it either. Now that he had seen the blood in the lake below, Xiao Yan did not doubt that it was the narwhal snake's blood. From the looks of it, the narwhal snake had most likely already died at the hands of some human experts. After all, in the Shilin mountain range, no other magical beast would dare to anger a super magical beast whose strength had reached the level of a 9-star half-emperor. Even magical beasts of the same level as the 9-star half-emperor would rarely invade the territories of other magical beasts. Now that the narwhal snake had already died, it was likely that only humans would be able to do so. Helplessly shaking his head, Xiao Yan could not help but feel pity in his heart. After all, it was very likely that the narwhal snake had become the last narwhal snake in this world. Even Xiao Yan would be somewhat reluctant to let it die at the hands of a human expert. The narwhal snake was exceptionally talented. Its bloodline was an extremely noble existence even among all snake-type magical beasts. If it had been able to mature, the narwhal snake's strength would likely not be too weak in the future. At the very least, it would not have been a problem for it to reach the level of a source ancestor. However, since the narwhal snake had already died, it was useless for Xiao Yan to feel any pity in his heart. After letting out a soft sigh in his heart, Xiao Yan could only helplessly withdraw his gaze. Currently, he should be most concerned about the desolate ancient ruins. However, before this, ever since he had arrived at this place, Xiao Yan had always had a question in his heart that he had not been able to answer. This was why Guyu, who was in his body, did not discover anything about the desolate ancient ruins when he had first arrived. Old Gu, why, there is no need for you to ask about this. The last time I came here, I was indeed unable to detect anything different. From the looks of it, the owner of this remains is likely quite powerful. This question had just appeared in Xiao Yan's heart when Guyu rejected it. This caused Xiao Yan to swallow the words that were about to come out of his mouth. At this moment, before Xiao Yan could answer the doubts in his heart, the blood-colored lake below suddenly began to churn. Countless pairs of eyes in the sky uniformly landed on the blood-colored lake below. At this very moment, everyone's eyes were filled with a fiery passion. The desolate ancient ruins was finally going to open. Chi chi chi, the blood-red lake churned intensely. The originally calm surface of the lake began to churn like boiling water at this moment. A countless number of human figures in the sky surged out the do chi within their bodies. Powerful auras immediately agglomerated into a frightening pressure in the sky. At the same time, various colored and beautiful do chi shot to the sky, transforming into numerous do chi light pillars that shot to the 9 heavens. Their auras were like rainbows. Everyone's eyes were burning with passion, and their hearts were burning with passion. The opening of the desolate ancient ruins was imminent, and they were only waiting for the moment when it truly opened. Then, everyone would enter in a single file. At that time, all the treasures in the desolate ancient ruins would depend on the methods of everyone present. If one was quick, one would obtain something. If one was slow, one would not obtain anything. Everyone understood this principle. However, no one present wished to give up this opportunity to be quick. Many figures swiftly descended. Finally, they paused in the air 100 feet above the lake. The bloody scent that permeated the air became even denser at this point. This caused everyone's breathing to involuntarily become a little hurried. The more this was the case, the denser the bloody scent that everyone inhaled became. Chi chi chi, an even denser bloody scent was emitted from the lake as it churned. It turned into a scarlet-red fog that slowly drifted into the sky. When everyone in the sky smelled this bloody scent, their expressions involuntarily changed. The instant they smelled the bloody scent, everyone felt that the do chi within their bodies involuntarily had a tendency to go berserk. This kind of situation caused everyone present to be incomparably shocked in their hearts. The final result of a do chi going berserk would be to cause a practitioner to explode and die. No one present was willing to die in such an unresigned manner. Immediately, the people below who were near the lake stood up. Numerous human figures swiftly turned around and flew toward the sky. However, at this moment, chi chi chi. Numerous blood pillars that reached the sky shot up from the lake below. Before those human figures in the sky could respond, the blood pillars that were as thick as a person's leg violently pierced through the chests of those people like numerous enormous spears. Immediately, fresh blood splattered in the sky. Those people, whose eyes were still fiery hot a moment ago, had already turned into a pile of corpses in the blink of an eye. As the blood pillars fell, numerous corpses that had lost control emitted a plop sound as they fell into the violently churning lake below. They disappeared in an instant. The appearance of this scene caused the expressions of everyone in the sky to change drastically. Who could have imagined that this scarlet-red lake, which appeared to be dyed by fresh blood, was actually able to kill a couple of Band D experts with one strike? This could really be described as frightening. In the blink of an eye, the wild heat in the eyes of everyone in the sky disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by a deep fear. Other than those elite Do-D, most of the Band D experts among the thousands of people had thoughts of withdrawing at this moment. Of course, at the same time, most of them were driven by greed. Everyone was hoping in their hearts that everything that had happened just now was the result of their eagerness for quick success. They were seeking their own deaths, and they could not blame anyone else for this. At this moment, they believed that as long as they waited patiently, they would be able to easily enter the desolate ancient ruins when the entrance was completely opened. At this moment, the hearts of the four great clans and even more elite Do-D were filled with disdain. Although the blood pillars that had appeared earlier were quite strong, they could only deal with a Band D class expert. They did not pose much of a threat to them. Xiao Yan, on the other hand, believed that with the addition of the heavenly flame, it would not be a problem for him to finish off those blood pillars with his strength. With the earlier matter, everyone had become much more well-behaved at this moment. They watched the bloody lake below churn increasingly intensely. In the end, the scarlet-red lake water slowly withdrew. An enormous scarlet-red hole appeared in the middle of the lake. At this moment, an even more intense bloody aura slowly drifted out from within it. Upon seeing this scene, the hearts of the crowd in the sky were not alarmed but instead rejoiced. Numerous gazes that were filled with greed swiftly shot towards the entrance of the cave. Even the leaders of the four great clans revealed a joyous expression on their faces. At this moment, the desolate ancient remains had finally been completely opened. Chapter 620. Charge, the desolate ancient remains has been opened. The eyes of the countless number of human figures in the sky immediately turned bright red when the scarlet-red lake water withdrew and the entrance to the remains appeared in front of everyone's sight. Their throats emitted a low and deep greedy roar. Countless numbers of figures instantly became like locusts as they charged explosively toward the deep hole in the middle of the blood-colored lake below. Compared to these people who were charging forward, Xiao Yan and the members of the four great clans in the sky stood in a towering manner. They did not charge forward because of the unusual movement of the people in the sky at this moment. Just as the crowd suspiciously swept their gazes over the members of the four great clans, in the next instant, a portion of the people below, who were about to enter the entrance of the ruins, suddenly began to swell uncontrollably. In the blink of an eye, the bodies of the dozen or so half-emperors present had swelled to an unimaginable extent. At this moment, the people who were rapidly descending seemed to have received a shock. They hurriedly stopped their rapidly descending bodies and hurriedly turned their bodies around, preparing to fly up into the sky. However, just when these people thought that they could escape death in their hearts, those Band D experts below, whose bodies had swelled to the limit, were finally unable to continue suppressing the wild and violent Do-Chi within their bodies. Amidst numerous painful screeches, the swollen bodies of those Band D experts below suddenly exploded. A nose-piercing bloody scent swept over the sky like a storm. Accompanying it was an even more frightening energy storm. The expressions of the group of Band D experts in the sky suddenly changed when they saw this energy storm. They hurriedly pulled back. Those elite Do-D waved their sleeves and scattered the energy that was heading toward them. Xiao Yan, who was in the middle of the energy storm, did not show the slightest change in his expression under the black robe. He allowed the storm to sweep over his body. The energy that it contained was completely swallowed by the great way of the void on his black robe. Although the others each possessed their own life-saving methods, there were still quite a number of people who were swallowed by the storm that was filled with a wild and violent nature. Of course, Xiao Yan's group, who were a little further away, might have the opportunity to respond in time. However, those Band D experts who were close by did not even have the time to maneuver their Do Chi. In the blink of an eye, dozens of Band D experts were swallowed by the frightening energy storm. Everyone's aura completely disappeared in an instant. Everyone in the sky looked down after the storm scattered. The entrance to the remains below still appeared unusually calm. However, not even the corpses of those Band D experts who had been swallowed by the energy storm could be seen at this moment. Gulp. Although those Band D experts were nowhere to be seen, everyone present could clearly see that the Scarlet Lake water, which had retreated, had once again begun to churn at this moment. Numerous enormous bubbles surged out from within. The bubbles emitted a bang and burst apart the moment they came into contact with the air. They transformed into scarlet blood that merged with the lake water. Immediately, the originally scarlet-red lake water became even more glaring. At the same time, the instant the bubble burst, a dense bloody aura also drifted up. It gradually spread in the air above the lake, just like a dense fog. Such a strange scene immediately caused everyone present to fall into chaos. The atmosphere in the area had also become extremely tense. The strange scene that had occurred earlier caused the hearts of all the half-emperors present to be as quiet as cicadas in winter. A deep chill crazily surged out from the bottom of their hearts. Those were nearly 100 Band D experts. Yet, all of them had died in such an unknown manner within the blink of an eye. This kind of matter was really unbelievable. The leaders of the 4 great clans also turned their gazes to the Scarlet Lake water below. Their deep eyes involuntarily revealed a solemn expression. Compared to the strange bloody fog, this lake water was the thing that truly caused them to be afraid. As expected, this remains is indeed not so easy to enter. From the looks of it, it should be a formation of quite a high tier. It is actually able to rely on blood to affect the Do Chi within a person's body. It is really frightening. Indeed, from the looks of the great strength, it is actually able to cause a high-class Band D to lose the ability to resist. From this, it can be seen that the tier of this formation is quite high. It is likely that it is at least a Tier 3 formation. TSK, Tier 3 formation. That is a super formation that can shake an elite Do D. It is unexpected that it would actually appear here. The few high-class Band D in the sky used resentful eyes to look at the churning lake water below. They involuntarily rejoiced in their hearts. The reason why they did not move was because they wanted to follow the footsteps of the 4 great clans and enter the remains. It was also because of this that these people were able to survive this calamity. Haha, this remains is really extraordinary. I have long heard that its owner was once an expert at the Origin King class. Now that I have seen it, it is indeed extraordinary. Hua Ba laughed out loud as he lowered his head to look at the entrance of the remains in front of the crowd. The Scarlet Lake water coupled with the bottomless entrance to the remains caused one's pores to stand on end. The deep remains appeared to be filled with a mysterious color. At the same time, it also seemed to contain an endless amount of killing intent. Hua Ba's eyes looked around him after his loud laughter sounded. He involuntarily parted his mouth and smiled when he saw that no one was moving. His eyes looked at the other 3 clans around him and laughed. Heh, don't the 3 of you want to go in and take a look? The other 3 clans looked at each other when they heard this. They saw that the other party did not move. The Bai clan and the Sun clan did not speak. However, as the leader of the 4 great clans, the Zhuo clan, Zhuo Bentang chuckled and cupped his hands towards Hua Ba. Haha, my Zhuo clan has always done things in an orderly manner. We are not in a hurry. If Elder Hua wants to go in and take a look, please do. Hua Ba's eyes involuntarily narrowed when he heard Zhuo Bentang's words. He nodded slightly and cupped his hands towards Zhuo Bentang. He put on a fake smile and said, haha, good. Since the Zhuo clan intends to let my Hua clan enter first, my Hua clan will not be polite. I will take my leave first. We will meet again in the remains. Hua Ba took the lead and led the group of Hua clan members after his words sounded. His body moved and he quickly descended towards the entrance of the remains below. Behind him, many of the Band D experts in the sky followed closely after seeing this. They hoped to borrow Hua Ba's strength to successfully enter the remains. At this moment, Xiao Yan was still standing among the remaining people, quietly waiting for the opportunity to arrive. Chapter 621. Chi. However, just as the members of the Hua clan landed, the lake below, which had just calmed down, once again began to churn. The hearts of the people in the sky involuntarily tightened when they saw this. Their gazes looked at the group of people who were swiftly descending. The emotions in their hearts involuntarily became a little anxious. At the same time, Hua Ba had clearly sensed a dangerous aura from the scarlet lake below. It was fine if he was the only one on this trip. However, he still needed to take care of the members of the Hua clan behind him. Hence, he needed to be careful. Hua Ba, who was descending, shook his body slightly. Immediately, a circle of surging dou qi swiftly spread from Hua Ba's body. In the blink of an eye, it had already agglomerated into a dou qi barrier around the members of the Hua clan. After which, the speed at which the members of the Hua clan were descending became a little slower. The group of half-emperors following closely behind did not dare to slight the situation when they saw this. They hurriedly spread out the dou qi within their bodies. After each of them reacted, they swiftly moved and caught up with the members of the Hua clan at the front. Puff puff. At this moment, numerous thick blood pillars suddenly shot out from the churning lake below just like before. They were like numerous huge snakes that had gone crazy. Their bodies emitted a bloody aura that was difficult to endure as they charged explosively toward the members of the Hua clan at this moment. The speed of the blood pillars had clearly exceeded the understanding of most of the half-emperors. Immediately, the expressions of quite a number of members of the Hua clan behind Hua Ba wildly changed. This was especially so when they smelled the dense bloody scent that permeated the air at this moment. Their expressions involuntarily paled and a fear involuntarily surged into their hearts. Although these members of the Hua clan were quite strong, their training had always been within the clan. They were just like flowers in a greenhouse. In a situation where they had never experienced the true tempering of life and death, just the scene that had happened earlier was already enough to challenge their hearts. However, at this moment, they had suddenly turned from being spectators to being the ones whose lives were about to be threatened. No matter how one looked at it, they still felt a wave of discomfort in their hearts. Hua Ba was naturally able to understand the reason behind the absent-mindedness of these children of his. However, now was not the time to allow them to be arrogant. If they were careless, their lives might be at risk. How could he allow them to be absent-minded? Brats, wake up. If you want to return alive to see your parents, hurry up and dodge. In the void, Hua Ba, who was rapidly descending, suddenly turned his head. A shocking angry roar immediately spread into the ears of the members of the Hua clan like a thunderclap. His voice was so loud that it caused the expressions of all the members of the Hua clan behind Hua Ba to change drastically. At the same time, they hurriedly recovered from their absent-mindedness. At the same time, their bodies rapidly dodged, narrowly dodging the blood pillars that were heading towards them. However, the half-emperors following closely behind the members of the Hua clan were not so lucky. When the members of the Hua clan dodged, the blood pillars ruthlessly pierced through the chests of the half-emperors following closely behind them. Pu. Immediately, another dozen half-emperors died under the bombardment of the blood pillars. Those half-emperors who were lucky enough to survive did not dare to easily approach the members of the Hua clan. They were afraid that they would end up dying a miserable death like these people. Seeing this, Hua Ba's old face did not reveal the slightest bit of pity. Instead, his gaze swept over those half-emperors who had separated. The corners of his mouth parted into a cold smile. Immediately, his body moved and led the members of the Hua clan behind him as they swiftly flew towards the entrance of the desolate ancient remains. At the same time, the other half-emperors in the air above the lake did not dare to be slow. Their bodies swiftly flew forward, hoping to enter the remains before the blood pillars arrived again. As everyone rapidly descended, many blood pillars that reached the sky shot up from the surface of the lake. Immediately, they suddenly turned around and shot towards the experts who were approaching the entrance of the remains. When the blood pillars once again fell into the lake below, only less than half of the originally black mass of people remained in the sky above the lake. Thinking back, it took less than 10 minutes for all of this to happen. In less than 10 minutes, hundreds of half-emperors had already died in this place. This time around, the sacrifice they had made in order to enter the desolate ancient remains could not be considered small. However, when the remaining people thought that this was the end and that they could finally enter the remains, wave after wave of extremely dense blood-colored fog once again drifted out from the deep hole below. The hearts of everyone present paled when they saw this scene. However, before they could react, the bodies of a couple of half-emperors in the swiftly descending group began to swell uncontrollably. Wild and violent qi flew all over their bodies. Within a short couple of breaths, the bodies of a couple of half-emperors had already reached the brink of exploding. Bang bang bang. Soon after, an earth-shaking explosion once again spread. At this moment, even Xiao Yan, who was in the sky and covered by a black robe, involuntarily had a change in expression. What a frightening formation. Half-emperors are like ants in front of it. They can easily be finished off by this formation. Xiao Yan quietly muttered in his heart with a grave expression. His eyes under the black robe swept over the entire place in an undetectable manner. Immediately, his originally frowning eyebrows became even more tightly knit. Currently, most of the people present were half-emperors. Once these people approached the sky above the lake, forget about the blood pillars. However, once they were contaminated by the bloody aura, the qi within their bodies would become violent. It was likely that even with Xiao Yan's ability, it would be difficult for him to not be injured. Just as Xiao Yan was thinking of a solution with a grave expression, the people from the Hua clan had already disappeared from the sky above the blood lake following the scattering of the energy storm below. From the looks of it, they should have already entered the remains. After the first wave of people entered, the people from the Sun clan, led by Sun Shua, began to move toward the entrance of the remains below. The Zhua clan and the Bai clan did not move. No one knew whether it was because they were not in a hurry or because of other reasons. However, just as Xiao Yan was patiently waiting for the people from the Sun clan to enter the remains, three familiar figures suddenly appeared in his sight. The expression on Xiao Yan's face under the black robe suddenly became sluggish when he saw these three figures. He had never imagined that he would actually meet them here. These three people were the three great beast kings of the Shilin mountain range, the Sky Eagle, the Flame Lion and Xiong Gang. Chapter 622. They have also come this time. Xiao Yan's old face involuntarily twitched under the black robe. He had never expected that these three fellows would actually be attracted by this desolate ancient remains. If it was during an ordinary time, Xiao Yan might feel a joy in his heart. However, the current situation caused Xiao Yan to be unable to smile. Despite the two miserable results from the previous two times, there were still quite a number of Band D experts following the Sun clan as they flew down. The densely packed heads were like locusts passing by. This time around, there were over a dozen other elite Do D other than the Sun clan. There were also an innumerable number of Band D experts following close behind. Tian Ying's trio were three of these countless number of Band D experts. Although the aura present was quite shocking at this moment, from the way Xiao Yan saw it, it did not mean that these people would be able to successfully enter the remains. On the contrary, the more half-step D there were, the more half-step D experts would be eroded by the blood fog. At that time, if anything were to happen, even with the strength of Tian Ying's group, it would be difficult for them to survive. These three fellows are really, Xiao Yan quietly cursed in his heart. He watched Tian Ying's trio follow the crowd and charge down. Only then did he bitterly clench his teeth. A thought passed through his heart and the qi within his body began to circulate. Immediately, the body under the black robe trembled slightly. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Yan, who was among the crowd, instantly disappeared from the sky. Bai Ying and Zhua Bentang frowned from the direction of the Bai clan and the Zhua clan after Xiao Yan instantly disappeared. Both of their gazes looked at the spot where Xiao Yan had been standing earlier. The two of them looked over and found that there was already nothing there. From the distribution of the surrounding people, there should have been a person there before their gazes looked over. Other than this, at a certain spot in the crowd, there was a human figure who was also wrapped in a black robe. The pair of eyes under the black robe stared at the spot where Xiao Yan had disappeared. His heart was deep in thought. Who is that person? He can actually disappear under this old man's watch. Who exactly is this person? Zhua Bentang's gaze was still fixed on the empty space, a rare solemn look appearing in the depths of his old eyes. At this moment, Buying was also staring at the void. No one knew what he was thinking in his heart. His gaze then swept across the crowd as if he was looking for someone. At this moment, below the crowd in the sky, a large number of people were swarming towards the entrance of the ruins. At the same time, the blood-colored lake below began to churn again. Chi chi chi, all of a sudden, pillars of blood that emitted a strong stench shot out once again. From the bottom to the top, they charged towards the swarming crowd in a haphazard manner. The crowd immediately turned chaotic. Everyone's faces carried a solemn expression. One by one, they raised the do chi within their bodies and the seals on their palms changed. In the blink of an eye, the entire sky had already been covered by various kinds of powerful do skills. With the previous example, everyone had come prepared. In order to deal with those blood pillars, they had already made all the necessary preparations. However, they had clearly underestimated just how frightening those blood pillars were. Bang bang bang. Even though there were many Band D experts present, all of them were only able to break a small portion of those blood pillars with their combined strength. The remaining blood pillars used the most overbearing method to break the various do skills that were heading towards them. Although it was a formation, a mere Band D was far from enough to defeat it. Puff puff puff, soon after, as dark red blood splattered across the sky, countless half-martial emperors were penetrated by the pillars of blood. As for the pillars of blood, they were extremely strange. Even if they did not injure any vital organs, they would emit a strange suction force that would directly absorb one's blood. Thus, at this moment, the majority of the half-martial emperors present had died from having their blood devoured by the pillars of blood. Amongst the chaotic crowd, Tianning and the other two were 9-star Band D. Their strength was quite extraordinary. Additionally, the three of them had great teamwork. Hence, they were not harmed by the blood pillars within a short period of time. However, this did not mean that they would have the opportunity to enter the desolate ancient remains. Above the lake of blood, numerous pillars of blood shot through the sky like enormous pythons. Every single time a pillar of blood shot through the sky, one or even more quasi-emperors would have their chests pierced through. In the blink of an eye, less than 100 quasi-emperors remained from the hundreds of quasi-emperors that had been there before. Being one of the 4 great clans, it was naturally extremely easy for the Sun clan to avoid those blood pillars with Sun Shua personally leading the group. As for those 10+ elite Do Di, they relied on their great strength and were similarly unharmed. As for those half-martial emperors, with the exception of a very small number of groups, all the other groups that were alone were unable to avoid being targeted by the pillars of blood. Bang! Tian Ying's body flew back after his Do technique was broken. Behind him, the Flame Shi and Xiong Gang once again attacked. Powerful Do techniques repeatedly struck a blood pillar that was charging over. Finally, the blood pillar was shattered by the combined strength of the 3 brothers when it was a couple of dozen feet in front of the 3 of them. However, before the 3 of them could catch their breath, the blood lake below once again churned. Another couple of blood pillars shot to the sky. This time around, they seemed to have a target as they charged explosively toward Tian Ying's group. Damn it! This strange thing will never be destroyed. Regardless of how many we break, it will still charge out of this blood lake. At the same time that the Do technique in his hand once again flew out, the Flame Lion involuntarily cursed out loud. He exchanged glances with the Sky Eagle duo by the side and hurriedly turned his body. His waist twisted in a strange arc and narrowly dodged the 3 blood pillars that were charging in front of him. This won't do. We must be quick. We must be the first to enter the remains before this blood pillar attacks us. Tian Ying's expression was extremely solemn. The strength of this blood pillar caused him to feel a sense of helplessness that he had never felt before. Currently, a forceful attack was useless. Hence, he could only rely on speed to obtain victory. I will delay it. All of you should withdraw first. Xionggang roared furiously. His body suddenly shook and an earthen yellow qi immediately spluttered out. It swiftly agglomerated on the surface of his body. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into a thick rock armor. But, the flame-sure by the side was just about to open his mouth. However, before he could say anything, the body of Xionggang, who had just agglomerated an armor, was suddenly sent flying by a bright red blood pillar. Xionggang. The appearance of this scene caused the expressions of Tianying and the flame-sure to change drastically. The two of them exclaimed in unison. They turned their eyes, but did not expect that other than the 3 blood pillars from earlier, another blood pillar had unknowingly charged toward them. Xionggang had been sent flying by this attack due to his carelessness. The two of them followed their gazes and looked over. At the end of the blood pillar, there were a total of 4 blood pillars. At this moment, they were surrounding Xionggang, who was in the middle. Looking over, the armor on Xiongang's body had already been completely destroyed by the attack earlier. Perhaps it was because of this armor that Xionggang was lucky enough to survive. However, the armor was broken and the 4 blood pillars surrounded Xionggang alone. Even if he were to go all out and resist, it was likely that he would not be able to survive. Immediately, the eyes of Tianying and the flame-sure immediately turned bright red. They had lived together with Xionggang for an unknown number of years. Currently, their strength had yet to break through to the DD class. How could they bear to see one of them die like this? Immediately, Tianying roared furiously in his heart. He used his fastest speed to charge towards Xionggang. The flame-sure, on the other hand, used all his strength to use his strongest Do skill to violently attack the blood pillar. However, this was just like a mayfly trying to shake a tree. There was no result at all. Damn it. Get lost. Turn around. If you have the ability, turn around and kill me. On top of being furious, the flame-sure's mouth also emitted a furious roar. However, the 4 blood pillars remained indifferent. Xionggang, who was surrounded by them, not only had his armor broken after receiving the attack earlier, but his body had also suffered quite a serious injury. At this moment, he was also surrounded by the 4 blood pillars. There was no way for him to retreat. At the same time, Tianying's face was flushed red. The Do Qi in his body had already been circulated to the limit. However, there was still a small distance between him and Xionggang. However, the blood pillar appeared to be unable to continue waiting. Its bright red body suddenly twisted. Soon after, it violently smashed towards Xionggang with a lightning-like speed. Xionggang felt a wave of helplessness in his heart when he saw the blood pillar that was charging toward him. He knew that at this distance, it was impossible for him to self-destruct even if he wanted to. From the looks of it at this moment, other than waiting for death, there was nothing he could do to resist. No. The flame-sure's and Tianying's faces were crazy. The expression on their faces had become unusually distorted because of the grief and fury in their hearts. However, regardless of how hard they tried, it was ultimately useless. Xiongang's death was already set in stone. Given the distance between the two of them, it was impossible for them to take any action to salvage the situation. Ugh, Xionggang slowly shut his eyes. Perhaps this would be able to reduce the endless pain that he would have to endure later on. If only Xiao Yan was here. That fellow seems to be able to do anything no matter what. The moment Xionggang shut his eyes, his heart inexplicably thought of Xiao Yan. However, he also knew that Xiao Yan had already left the Shili mountain range. Currently, there was only them in this place. However, the next moment, swoosh, a thunderous roar that resounded across the sky was suddenly transmitted over. Soon after, the ferocious attack of the blood pillar forcefully missed. Huh, brother, it is not the time to despair yet. If you don't try, how do you know that it will definitely fail? A familiar soft laughter was transmitted from beside his ear. Suddenly, Xiongang's mind shook violently. His tightly shut eyes abruptly opened. A handsome face leisurely stood in front of him. Soon after, Xiongang's pupils abruptly shrunk. The emotions in his heart had also reached the peak in an instant. His heart was filled with disbelief as he looked at Xiao Yan in front of him. It was a long while later before Xiongang's hoarse voice slowly spoke. You. Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan. Chapter 623. Shu. Xionggang had just spat out these words from his mouth when the expression of Xiao Yan, who was wearing a black robe, immediately changed. He hurriedly gestured for the latter to keep quiet. Soon after, Xionggang quickly reacted and gently nodded his head. His somewhat simple and honest face was currently filled with a joyous smile. He knew that since Xiao Yan had appeared at this moment, it would not be a problem for the three of them to enter the desolate ancient remains. Even though they had not truly interacted with Xiao Yan for a long time, they had unknowingly become friends with each other. Moreover, Xiao Yan's strength caused them to be filled with confidence. This was especially so after the incident at the eastern wall where Xiao Yan had entered the hinterland of Shilin. The three of them firmly believed in Xiao Yan in their hearts. It seemed that as long as any trouble was placed in front of Xiao Yan, it would be easily solved. Even though they did not know where this confidence came from, it did not cause them to have the slightest doubt in their hearts. I really did not expect that you would actually appear here. I really have to thank you for saving my life. If it was not for you today, I'm afraid that the current me would have been under that blood pillar. Xiongang's somewhat pale face was filled with smiles as he stood up. He inhaled 2 deep breaths of air and his mind swiftly recovered from the incident earlier. After which, his large palm violently patted Xiao Yan's shoulder. His gaze turned. In the distant empty space, Sky Eagle and Flame Lion had also discovered the commotion here at this moment. Seeing that Xionggang was fine, a joyous glow was emitted from the eyes of the two of them. Their bodies moved and they hurriedly flew over. The two of them approached and saw that Xionggang was indeed fine. Only then did the two of them let out a long sigh of relief. Their tensed hearts also suddenly relaxed. Look at how nervous the two of you are. Am I not fine? Xionggang laughed when he saw the two people in front of him. His face involuntarily revealed an expression of lingering fear as he spoke. You are really a stubborn person. If it was not for this Mister's timely intervention earlier, it is likely that you would have already become another dead soul under that blood pillar. You actually still dare to laugh here. We should have really let that blood pillar take you in earlier. Although Tianning understood in his heart that Xionggang was only doing this to reassure them, he still involuntarily scolded when he heard this. After which, he turned his gaze and looked at Xiao Yan, whose back was facing them and whose body was hidden under a black robe. His gaze ruthlessly cut at Xionggang before exchanging glances with the Flame Lion by the side. The two of them nodded in unison. Soon after, they cupped their hands to the mysterious black-robed human figure in front of them. The both of us thank Elder for saving my younger brother's life. The expression on Xiongang's face immediately became dull when he heard this. Even Xiao Yan, who was in front of the three of them at this moment, involuntarily revealed a playful smile on his face under the black robe. Immediately, he slowly turned around in front of the respectful gazes of the two behind him. Soon after, a familiar handsome face appeared in front of Sky Eagle and the Flame Lion's eyes. These two old brothers, this little brother is really unable to accept this great gift from the both of you. The expressions on the faces of Sky Eagle and the Flame Lion froze the moment they saw this familiar face. Soon after, the two of them opened their mouths to exclaim. However, Xiao Yan was already prepared. The moment the two of them exclaimed, an invisible strength immediately sealed the empty space where the three of them were located. Any sound within it was naturally blocked. Xiao Yan. Words that were filled with surprise were emitted from the mouths of the two of them. The expressions on their faces instantly became wild joy. They did not expect that they would actually meet Xiao Yan during this trip to the desolate ancient remains. Xiao Yan, it is really you. Sky Eagle's face was filled with disbelief as he looked at Xiao Yan in front of him. He did not expect that Xiao Yan would actually appear in the Shilin mountain range. Haven't you already passed through the Shilin mountain range? why have you appeared here again? The flame lion by the side also walked forward with a face filled with surprise. However, soon after, he frowned slightly and asked with a somewhat doubtful tone. Upon hearing this, not only Sky Eagle, even Xionggang by the side also involuntarily frowned. Could it be that Xiao Yan in front of them did not pass through the Shili mountain range? Xiao Yan smiled faintly as if he had guessed the thoughts of the three in front of him. Immediately, he smiled and explained to the three of them in front of him. Cuckoo, the three of you are thinking too much. Although I have indeed passed through the Shili mountain range, I will naturally be able to return after leaving. Sky Eagle and the other two came to a sudden understanding when they heard this. However, Sky Eagle's expression involuntarily changed when he turned his eyes. This was because while the three of them were focused on conversing, the four blood pillars in the sky appeared to have been angered. They suddenly turned in the sky and the four blood pillars immediately charged towards Xiao Yan's group. From the looks of it, it seemed that they would not rest until they killed Xiao Yan's group. Damn it. I have nearly forgotten that now is not the time to talk. Everyone be careful. Those damn things are coming again. Sky Eagle's voice was solemn as he spoke. His body shook and the Do Chi within his body once again spluttered out. At the same time, the Flame Lion and Xionggang by his side also maneuvered the Do Chi within their bodies in preparation to face the four blood pillars that were about to arrive. However, just as the three of them were preparing to attack, Xiao Yan, who was currently standing behind the three of them, used his hand to gently pat Sky Eagle's shoulder. The latter's eyes hardened. Soon after, Xiao Yan blocked the three in front of him. Cuckoo, these three old brothers, leave this thing to me. Xiao Yan laughed faintly. His gaze calmly swept over the faces of the three of them. Immediately, it landed on the four blood pillars. The hand under his sleeves was slowly clenched. The fury that had been suppressed within his chest since the beginning had finally shown some unusual signs at this moment. He treated the Sky Eagle trio as his friends and naturally did not wish for any of them to be hurt. However, Xionggang had nearly lost his life to these strange blood pillars earlier. It was just as Xionggang had said. If it was not because Xiao Yan was coincidentally present today, he would really have no way to survive. Moreover, the Sky Eagle duo might even risk their lives for Xionggang. This was something that Xiao Yan was unwilling to see no matter what. However, the Sky Eagle trio involuntarily frowned in the face of Xiao Yan's actions. Even though they had some understanding of Xiao Yan's true strength, the strength of these blood pillars was even more frightening than the cold wind under the eastern wall back then. If Xiao Yan was careless, would it not? Xiao Yan, cuckoo, does old brother Sky Eagle not believe in my ability? Ugh, however, just as Sky Eagle was about to open his mouth, Xiao Yan laughed softly, forcefully stopping the words that were about to reach his mouth. Immediately, Sky Eagle glanced at the Flame Lion and Xionggang beside him. He helplessly laughed bitterly. The three of them shifted their feet slightly, giving Xiao Yan the space in front of them. At the same time, other than the group of Band D experts near the lake, the other group of Band D experts in the sky were looking at the Sky Eagle trio below with doubtful faces. These three fellows were actually still standing there in a daze when they saw the blood pillars charging toward them. Were they seeking death? Of course, other than these Band D experts, the eyes of those elite Do D present, including Zhuo Bentang and Bai Ying, had landed on the black-robed Xiao Yan below at this moment. No one could tell, but they were aware that the reason why the Sky Eagle trio had moved aside was likely because this mysterious black-robed person was about to personally intervene. Just who is this person? Even the old me is unable to detect his aura. Zhuo Bentang's eyes were cautious as he stared at Xiao Yan below. He involuntarily thought quietly in his heart. At the same time, Bai Ying's heart was also filled with doubt as he stared at Xiao Yan. The doubt in his heart was not smaller than Zhuo Bentang's. At the same time, the expression on Xiao Yan's face, which was covered by a black robe, was calm as he faced the four blood pillars that were about to arrive in front of him in the empty space below. On the other hand, Tianying and the other two behind him involuntarily felt a wave of worry in their hearts despite being clearly aware of Xiao Yan's great strength in their hearts. A thought passed through his mind and the dou qi within the vortex within his body began to circulate. Following Xiao Yan's control, threads of tiny great Tao strength gradually appeared in the invisible empty space. Immediately, they were absorbed into Xiao Yan's body. Soon after, the 4 blood pillars that reached the sky arrived in front of Xiao Yan's group in the blink of an eye. Seemingly having seen that Xiao Yan's group did not react, the blood pillars suddenly became furious. The aura on them also became increasingly frightening. However, in the next moment, when the 4 blood pillars ruthlessly pierced through the bodies of Xiao Yan's group, Xiao Yan suddenly waved his large hand under the black robe. Suddenly, as his palm cut through the empty space, a pitch-black great Tao strength swiftly condensed in the empty space and instantly transformed into 4 pitch-black tents. Soon after, the 4 blood pillars that reached the sky violently collided with the 4 tents that had suddenly appeared. However, in the next moment, the expected scene of the tents exploding did not occur. Instead, the 4 blood pillars actually disappeared the moment they came into contact with the tents. Immediately, everyone's eyes were stunned. Numerous gazes filled with disbelief stared fixedly at the 4 blood pillars that reached the sky. However, when the 4 blood pillars completely disappeared into the tents, everyone focused their eyes. The 4 tents stood flat while the 4 blood pillars had completely disappeared. Chapter 624. Hua, everyone in the sky was in an uproar. Many pairs of eyes that were filled with disbelief landed on the black-robed figure below. It was difficult to imagine that the blood pillars that had caused hundreds of Band D experts to lose their lives a moment ago would actually disappear in such a strange manner in front of this mysterious black-robed person. The blood pillars have actually disappeared. The group of Band D experts in the sky were stunned as they stared at the 4 dark black tents in front of Xiao Yan. They found it hard to believe that these 4 inconspicuous dark black tents had actually easily destroyed the 4 blood pillars that had killed hundreds of Band D experts. This matter was too shocking. Disappeared? What do you mean by disappeared? The blood pillars should have been swallowed. What a frightening fellow. Just who is he? The muscles on Zhuo Bentang's old face involuntarily twitched when he heard the voice that was transmitted from the crowd. He had clearly sensed an extremely strange energy being emitted from the 4 tents the instant the blood pillars touched them. This was the reason why the 4 blood pillars had completely disappeared within the tents. Great Tao energy. Moreover, this is the void Great Tao. At this moment, even Zhuolin, who was quietly standing beside Zhuo Bentang, could not help but look at Xiao Yan below. This was especially the case when his gaze landed on the 4 tents. His eyes involuntarily emitted a shocked glint. In the entire western region, there were many people who were stronger than Zhuolin. However, there were very few people who could truly cause Zhuolin to feel surprised. With Zhuolin's status and strength, he had already seen far too many elite Dou Di. However, the number of people who could truly arouse his interest could be counted with one's fingers. It was these few people that could be counted with one's fingers that all controlled a powerful Great Way strength. Today, however, he had met an even more frightening person. The void Great Tao. Even when placed among all the Great Tao energy, it was an existence that was ranked at the top. Compared to the Great Tao energy that he had seen in the past, it was not even worth mentioning. Young master, I'm afraid this person will be our biggest opponent on this trip. Zhuo Bentang's eyes revealed a grave expression. The Great Tao strength was something that was hard to find. Even though he was a 3-star Dou Di, he had yet to comprehend it. Now that he had seen it, his heart naturally did not dare to be careless. Moreover, from the looks of this black-robed person's attack, it was likely that his strength was quite strong. The other party might also be a 3-star Dou Di or even stronger than him. Facing an opponent of this level, he could not afford to be careless. If we become enemies with him, he will naturally become our opponent. However, if we can become friends with him, then perhaps we will be able to gain quite a bit from this trip. Zhuolin narrowed his eyes. Compared to Zhuo Bentang's seriousness, he was much more relaxed. No one would be willing to become enemies with a Dou Di. It would naturally be best if they could become friends. However, if they could not, they would definitely not become enemies with him. Otherwise, no one would be able to easily endure the fury of a Dodi. Young Lord wants to join forces with him. However, we do not know his true identity. If he has other thoughts, won't we be in trouble? Zhuo Bentang involuntarily frowned when he heard Zhuo Lin's words. Traveling with a person whose identity they did not know would ultimately be unable to guarantee their safety. Cuckoo, trouble? We are already in trouble. If we do not join forces with him, he will definitely stand against us. However, if we take the initiative to join forces with him, we might still have other choices. After all, even if he is also an elite Dodi, he will not be able to fight against the combined strength of the 4 great clans by himself. Zhuo Lin coldly laughed. He had already considered this point in his mind. However, even if we join forces with this fellow, won't we have to face the combined strength of the other 3 clans? Once they join forces, it is likely that we will be in a very passive position. So what if we join forces? Since when has our Zhuo clan not been a thorn in the eyes of the other 3 clans? As long as we can join forces with him on this trip, we will still be the winner. At the very most, we will split everything that we obtain with this fellow in a 40-60 split. Zhuo Lin's expression was calm as he continued to speak after Zhuo Bentang's words sounded. These things that an ordinary person would need to think about seemed to have already been arranged by Zhuo Lin. Zhuo Bentang's heart began to admire this young master of his when he heard Zhuo Lin speak without any hesitation. With such a mind, why would his Zhuo clan need to worry about not being able to prosper? Young Lord's intelligence is outstanding. This subordinate admires you greatly. Suddenly, Zhuo Bentang took a step back and actually cupped his hands toward Zhuo Lin in midair. A surprised expression flashed across the latter's eyes when he saw this. However, he ultimately laughed coldly in his heart. He had seen quite a number of people who flattered him. It was just that he did not expect that Zhuo Bentang, a 3-star Dodi, would actually lower himself to do such a thing. However, the more he acted in this manner, the more Zhuo Lin avoided him in his heart. Now is not the time to be happy. Instead of saying such nonsense, why don't you think about how to get closer to this person? Otherwise, no matter how much we take the initiative, we will only be rejected by him. Zhuo Lin let out a faint cold snort. Immediately, he ceased speaking. Instead, his eyes stared intently at Xiao Yan below. There was a glint flowing deep within his eyes. At the same time, on the other side, the head of the Bai clan, Bai Ying, also revealed a surprised expression as he looked at Xiao Yan in the empty space below. However, compared to the former, the corner of Bai Ying's mouth carried a vague smile at this moment. He had already paid attention to everyone in the city before they had left. His aim was to see if Xiao Yan was among them. Unfortunately, with the Great Way strength acting as a barrier, he could only return empty-handed no matter how he searched. But now, Xiao Yan had taken the initiative to reveal his grand Dao. For Bai Ying, who had seen this tent before, there was no need to even think about it. He immediately recognized the black-robed person in the sky. It was definitely Xiao Yan. This guy has hidden himself well. With the Great Way strength, even I am unable to detect him. Fortunately, the people from the Sun clan have already entered the ruins. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't even have the chance to enter the ruins today. Bai Ying laughed. He glanced at the empty space above the entrance of the remains. Earlier, the members of the Sun clan had taken the lead to enter the remains. It was because of this that Xiao Yan's identity was able to be hidden. The smile on the corner of Bai Ying's mouth gradually disappeared. At the same time, Xiao Yan's dark black eyes seemed to have sensed something as they swept across everyone in the sky. When they swept past Bai Ying, Xiao Yan's eyes paused for a moment. Immediately, they quickly landed on Zhuo Lin. Although Bai Ying and Zhuo Bentang were both 3-star Dodi, for some unknown reason, the only person present who made Xiao Yan feel pressured was not Zhuo Lin alone. Immediately, a solemn expression involuntarily surged deep within Xiao Yan's dark black eyes. Although he did not know what that strange feeling was, Xiao Yan did not doubt his intuition. This Zhuo Lin is likely not easy to deal with. Chapter 625. After a couple of consecutive attacks by Xiao Yan, the blood pillar that soared high into the sky gradually scattered. Soon after, the blood lake below also recovered its calmness. Although this was the case, the hearts of everyone who was still standing on the surface of the lake began to feel increasingly anxious. With the experience from the previous 2 times, they already knew that when the blood pillar fell, the strange blood fog would officially appear soon after. Sure enough, when everyone's eyes landed, a bright red blood fog gradually drifted out from the deep hole below. At this moment, the expressions of these experts standing in the air changed one after another. At the same time, everyone circulated the do-chi within their bodies and agglomerated a do-chi film on the surface of their bodies, wrapping around their entire bodies. Everyone's expression was grave as they looked at the bright red blood fog that was slowly drifting in the air below. Even though they were a great distance away, the dense stench that was emitted from the blood fog still caused their noses to be piercing. At this moment, the expressions of Tian-Ying and the other 2 standing beside Xiao Yan involuntarily changed once again. Compared to the strange blood pillar earlier, this blood fog was even more frightening, causing one's heart to feel fear. How should we deal with this thing? Although your great Tao strength can block the blood pillar, this blood fog is after all an invisible thing that is difficult to grasp. It is impossible to completely block it outside. Tian-Ying's expression was grave. He could only try his luck when faced with this blood fog. He wanted to see if he could charge into the entrance of the remains before this blood fog affected the do-chi within his body. Haha, 3 old brothers, you can rest assured that with me around, this blood fog can forget about entering even the slightest bit of your bodies. However, Xiao Yan merely smiled faintly in the face of this. It seemed that he was not concerned about this blood fog. Immediately, before the 3 people beside him could recover, Xiao Yan waved his sleeve. 3 black lights immediately rushed out. Soon after, they covered the bodies of the 3 people in front of him. Tian-Ying and the other 2 immediately recovered. The 3 pairs of eyes swept over each other. At this moment, they saw that the 3 of them were wearing the same large black robe that Xiao Yan was wearing. The 3 of them involuntarily raised their eyebrows when they saw this. Xiao Yan smiled slightly. He took the lead to turn around and swiftly flew towards the entrance of the remains below. Old brothers, you must remember that the empty space robes on your bodies can only be maintained for 15 minutes. During this period of time, the empty space robes will be able to hide all the auras on your bodies. The blood fog will also be isolated outside. I believe that this 15 minutes is sufficient for us to enter the remains. Tian-Ying and the other 2 immediately nodded when they heard this. At the same time, there was an additional fiery heat in their eyes when they looked at the entrance of the remains below. Tian-Ying. If we have the opportunity in the future, the 3 of us, we. Tian-Ying's words undoubtedly represented the intentions of the other 2. Yan Shi and Xiong Gang by the side nodded heavily after Tian-Ying's words were emitted from his mouth. Tian-Ying and the other 2 actually once again respectfully cupped their hands together and bowed to Xiao Yan in front of the gazes of countless experts in the sky. Xiao Yan was involuntarily startled when he saw this. He immediately waved his large sleeve. An invisible force immediately swept out and hurriedly lifted the 3 of them in front of him. Only then did he smile and say, "It is merely a small matter. Why should the 3 of you be bothered by it? Moreover, the 3 of you are my friends. As the saying goes, one should sacrifice oneself for a friend. I am merely doing my best. It is nothing." Tian-Ying and the other 2 involuntarily smiled when they heard this. Just as they were about to speak, many miserable cries were suddenly transmitted from the empty space below, interrupting the 4 of them. Ah! 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 Xiao Yan immediately frowned when his eyes fell. Indeed, the most troublesome thing was not whether the few of them would be eroded by the blood fog. Instead, it was the Ban Di experts below. Let's leave quickly. The do-chi within the bodies of those few fellows is about to explode. My empty space robe is unable to block that damn thing. Let's quickly descend. Xiao Yan's expression was somewhat grave as he spoke in a deep voice. Immediately, Tian-Ying and the other 2 did not dare to hesitate any longer. Their bodies moved and they swiftly flew towards the entrance of the remains below. Xiao Yan's eyes were grave as they once again swept over those Bandi experts below, whose bodies were swiftly swelling. Just as he was about to move, the expression in his eyes involuntarily changed. He suddenly turned his head. Under the cover of his black robe, a pair of sharp eyes suddenly looked towards the black mass of people in the sky. He could clearly sense that there was a pair of eyes staring at him from that spot earlier. Who is it? Although Xiao Yan had turned his head in time, the owner of that pair of eyes had already turned away. At this moment, all that Xiao Yan could see was a large group of Bandi experts standing high in the empty space, overlooking everything that was happening below. Humph! A cold snort that was neither soft nor heavy was emitted from Xiao Yan's nose. After which, his body twisted and he turned into a ray of light. He carried a lightning-like speed as he swiftly charged towards the entrance of the remains below. Bang bang bang! Soon after, the wild and violent do-chi within the bodies of those Bandi experts in the empty space below, who had been eroded by the blood fog, also erupted uncontrollably at this moment. One by one, the Bandi experts exploded like human bombs. Immediately, an extremely destructive and frightening energy storm once again swept over this empty space. This time around, Xiao Yan was no longer as calm as before in the face of this powerful energy storm. At such a distance, the strength that they had to endure was the combined strength of those Bandi experts exploding together. If they were the slightest bit careless, it was likely that even Xiao Yan would suffer quite a lot. The powerful energy storm crazily wreaked havoc in the sky from all directions. The invisible space was like glass shattering with a bang. In the blink of an eye, the entire place collapsed within the endless void. Endless darkness covered the entire place, causing shock to spread in everyone's hearts. Even though all the Bandi experts were doing their best to block this frightening storm, it was after all the energy released from over a dozen Bandi experts exploding together. Under this energy, all those below the strength of a 7-star Bandi were instantly and mercilessly killed in the sky. Of course, Xiao Yan was an exception. The black robes that were draped over Tian Ying's group were formed from Xiao Yan's tent. Their effects were naturally extraordinary. Although they were unable to completely block the strength of this storm, they were more or less effective. Moreover, Tian Ying's group were advanced 9-star Ban Emperors. Although it was unavoidable for them to suffer some injuries when they used their full strength, they were ultimately in a much better state than the other Bandi experts. As for Xiao Yan himself, the instant the energy storm arrived, Xiao Yan immediately took out 3 tents. Soon after, a small half of the energy was blocked by the tents. After that, by relying on his powerful physical strength and the Dragon Phoenix ancient armor, Xiao Yan was able to forcefully block this attack. Of course, even though this was the case, Xiao Yan still involuntarily emitted a muffled groan from his throat. A trace of fishy sweetness also entered his mouth. Chapter 626. That frightening energy storm continued for over 10 minutes. Everyone in the area was deeply shocked by this energy storm. When the storm dissipated, the entire world became pitch black, just like night. At a glance, the land within a radius of 1,000 miles was originally a lively mountain range. However, at this moment, it had been forcefully flattened by the storm. The blood lake below churned as though it was mocking the experts in the sky. The remaining 100+ experts in the sky had pale faces. Almost all of them had fresh blood hanging from the corner of their mouths. There were even some who had managed to preserve their lives but ended up with seriously injured bodies. Even if they wanted to recover, they did not know how long they would have to wait. When the experts in the sky saw this scene below, quite a number of them began to think of retreating in their hearts. Although the treasures were good, they needed to be alive to obtain them. Currently, they could not even pass the first hurdle. How could they even talk about entering the remains and fighting for the treasures inside? At this moment, Zhuo Bentang and Zhuo Lin by the side were frowning. Both of them used their gazes to stare intently at Xiao Yan below. Their eyes were filled with suspicion. From the way they saw it, the strength of this black-robed person in front of them was likely at least a 3-star Do-di. However, why was he actually forced back in one strike when faced with that energy storm? This was not quite right. What is going on with this fellow's strength? Hasn't he already comprehended the Great Way energy? Why does his strength not appear to be that of an elite Dodi? Zhuo Bentang's brows were tightly knit together. He could not understand why this black-robed person, who had clearly grasped the Great Way energy, would be forced back by that energy storm. Moreover, from the looks of it, the black-robed person should be injured. The moment Zhuo Bentang spoke, Zhuo Lin seemed to have thought of something. A glint flashed in his sharp eyes, and he let out a cold snort. Soon after, he said in a low voice, "Don't worry, I'm not going to give you a chance. It is true that he has grasped the Great Way energy. However, who told you that one must be an elite Do-Di in order to grasp the Great Way energy?" The look in Zhuo Bentang's eyes froze. Then, Zhuo Lin opened his mouth again and said, "Don't worry. As long as some people have sufficient talent and a comprehension ability that exceeds an ordinary person, it is not impossible for them to comprehend the strength of the Great Way before they are a Do-Di. After all, even in this entire continent, no one can be certain that a Ban-Di is unable to comprehend the strength of the Great Way." Young master, you mean this guy is actually a half-martial emperor who has comprehended the Great Tao energy? Hearing Zhuo Lin's words, Zhuo Bentang's face was suddenly shocked, and he felt a burst of disbelief in his heart. Seeing this, Zhuo Lin frowned and nodded slightly. That is extremely possible. After all, a person who is unable to unleash the strength of a Do-Di but has grasped the strength of the Great Way. Unless his talent is shocking, there is no other answer. Heavens, if this is really the case, isn't this fellow a little too frightening? A person who had grasped the strength of the Great Way even though his strength had yet to reach the Do-Di class. This kind of person would definitely become a person that various factions would fight to rope in. Being a Ban-Di, he had already grasped the strength of the Great Way. If his strength were to reach the Do-Di class, would he not be able to defy the heavens? While Zhuo Bentang's heart was feeling shocked by Xiao Yan's strength, a large cluster of scarlet red-hot blood fog slowly floated out from the deep underground hole below, seemingly intending to give everyone a blow. It emitted a dense stench that caused one to feel nauseous as it slowly flew toward everyone in the empty sky. This time around, before the blood fog could come close, the expressions of the remaining Ban-Di experts in the empty sky suddenly changed drastically. The expressions on their faces were as though they had seen something frightening. All of them hurriedly dragged their injured bodies and swiftly ran toward the sky. At this moment, even Tianying and the other two involuntarily felt some disappointment and regret in their hearts after seeing Xiao Yan's somewhat pale face. Although they knew that there were quite a number of treasures within the remains, at the same time, they also knew that if it was not for Xiao Yan lending a hand at a critical moment during this trip to the desolate ancient remains, they would have long since died under the blood pillar. How would they end up in such a state now? Although the three of them were not strong enough, they did not wish to implicate Xiao Yan. The latter's potential and strength were far from what the three of them could compare with. If it were not for the three of them, it was likely that Xiao Yan would not have split his strength and ended up being injured. The three pairs of eyes under the black robes exchanged glances with each other. Given the tacit understanding between the three of them, even just a glance was sufficient for them to express many things. Hence, the three of them immediately nodded in unison. After which, they turned their eyes to Xiao Yan. Tianying, who was the leader, opened his mouth once again. However, unlike before, the three of them chose to withdraw this time around. "Brother Xiao Yan, it looks like the three of us are not fortunate enough to enjoy the treasures in the remains." A regretful expression appeared on Tianying's face as he stared intently at Xiao Yan in front of him and said in a serious voice. Xiao Yan could not help but frown when he heard this. He immediately asked, "Brother Tianying, may I know what you mean by this?" Brother Xiao Yan, there is no need to overthink. I just feel that the three of us are not strong enough. I believe that even if we enter the remains, we will not be able to obtain any benefits. If we are unlucky, we might even lose our lives. Hence, I feel that, Brother Tianying, don't worry. I have said that with me around, the blood fog will not be able to harm you at all. Don't worry, I will definitely bring all of you in alive. Similarly, I will be able to bring all of you back alive. As soon as Xiao Yan finished speaking, he immediately called out to Guyu in his heart. "Old Gu, lend me a hand." Guyu did not hesitate after hearing Xiao Yan's words. A soft acknowledgement was emitted from his heart. A thought passed through his mind and a dense white flame immediately rose from within Xiao Yan's body with a puffed sound. Ha! Xiao Yan let out a stern cry in his heart. Before Tian Ying's trio in front of him could recover, he suddenly waved his large hand. Soon after, a dense white flame immediately spluttered out of Xiao Yan's palm at the same time the three of them recovered. In the blink of an eye, it had already covered the entire empty space. Under the control of Xiao Yan's spiritual strength, the dense white flame turned into a circular fire barrier that swiftly spread with Xiao Yan at the center. After which, it gradually descended under Xiao Yan's control. Wherever it passed, the blood fog that had drifted upwards would turn into white smoke with a chi-chi sound and disappear. Finally, the enormous dense white flame barrier completely sealed the enormous hole below in front of everyone's stunned expressions. The blood fog that continued to surge out from within was completely incinerated by it. At the same time, Zhuo Bentang and Zhuo Lin in the sky were staring at Xiao Yan in the empty space below. At this moment, both of their eyes revealed a surprised expression. This is a heavenly flame? Chapter 627. Xiao Yan's body was as steady as Mount Tai as he stood in the air in this world that was shrouded by clouds and mist. He remained unmoved no matter how hard the great beauty in front of him pulled. "Husband, let's go quickly. We don't know where Sun Er is now. We must find her as soon as possible." Kai Lin's beautiful face revealed an anxious expression. Her lotus root-like snow-white arm was exposed to the air. Her tender hand tightly grabbed Xiao Yan's wrist as she tried her best to bring Xiao Yan away from this place. At this moment, the expression in Xiao Yan's dark black eyes appeared indifferent. However, his gaze still involuntarily swept over the familiar lovely body in front of him. Only then did he slowly inhale a deep breath of air. He gently shook his head and slowly said in a calm yet firm tone, "You are right. You are right. Let go. You are not Kai Lin." The movement of the great beauty in front of Xiao Yan immediately became sluggish after these words were uttered. A couple of breaths later, she finally released her hand, which was tightly holding Xiao Yan's wrist. Soon after, the surrounding fog swiftly gathered around Kai Lin. In the blink of an eye, the human figure in front of Xiao Yan had transformed into a cluster of blurry human figures whose face could not be seen clearly. At the same time, a somewhat indifferent, unfamiliar female voice was spat out from her mouth. "How did you discover it?" Xiao Yan's heart was suddenly startled when these words were uttered. The expression on his face involuntarily changed. Surprise involuntarily surged into his dark black eyes. His eyes stared intently at the fog in front of him that had the appearance of a human. The shock in his heart was unimaginable. This formation, has actually gained sentience." It was a long while later before Xiao Yan finally revealed a surprised expression as he spoke in a deep voice. His tone was grave. It was likely that no one would be able to maintain a calm state of mind in the face of such a shocking matter. He had heard of a Dou technique transforming into a spirit, but he had never heard of a formation that could do so. If this was really the case, would he not be in danger if this person in front of him wanted to attack him? The cluster of cream-white fog surged slightly after Xiao Yan's words were uttered. It immediately became quiet. However, soon after, a soft laughter with unknown meaning was emitted from the fog. At the same time, the unfamiliar and indifferent female voice was quickly emitted. "Perhaps." Hiss! Xiao Yan involuntarily inhaled a breath of cool air under the black robe when he heard this ambiguous answer. His originally frowning eyebrows were tightly knit together at this moment. The seriousness in his heart did not reduce because of this. After all, regardless of whether the other party was the spirit of this formation or not, it was likely that it would not be difficult for her to deal with him. Xiao Yan could only helplessly withdraw his thoughts after thinking for a while in vain. His breathing was a little heavy as he inhaled a deep breath of air. His eyelids were lowered and a glint flowed deep within his dark black eyes. Only then did he look at the cluster of fog in front of him. He paused for a moment before the corner of his mouth was lifted into a smile. The reason I am able to recognize that you are a fake is because Kai Lin does not address me as husband. She has always called me by my name. The cream-white human figure in front of him involuntarily fluctuated after Xiao Yan's words were uttered. Immediately, a soft laugh was emitted from the human figure. It seemed to be mocking itself, but it also seemed to represent that this was the case. Xiao Yan involuntarily frowned when he saw this. A thought passed through his heart and the dou qi within the vortex within his body began to quietly circulate at this moment. He was prepared to deal with this strange formation in front of him at any moment. There is no need to be nervous. You can leave this place. The faint voice of a woman was emitted from the fog in front of him after seemingly sensing the dou qi fluctuation within Xiao Yan's body. Xiao Yan's eyes involuntarily hardened. Soon after this woman's voice sounded, the fog that filled the space in front of Xiao Yan seemed to have received an order and swiftly scattered to the sides. A 2-meter-wide path appeared in front of Xiao Yan. A surprised expression involuntarily flashed across Xiao Yan's eyes when he saw this. He frowned slightly and his spiritual strength spread out. It swiftly spread toward the end of the path in front of him. After the fog scattered, the speed at which Xiao Yan's spiritual strength spread out seemed to have unknowingly increased. As expected, within a couple of breaths, the spiritual strength that Xiao Yan had spread out swiftly found the exit of the formation that he had sensed earlier. Xiao Yan's expression was immediately startled when he found the exit of the formation. It was unexpected that the formation in front of him would actually take the initiative to allow him to leave the formation. This was really strange. You are really letting me leave. I don't believe that you, as the spirit of the formation, are able to do such a disobedient thing. Xiao Yan's voice hesitated for an instant before he finally could not resist asking. The cluster of fog in front of him involuntarily became silent when it heard this. Soon after, a lovely laughter was swiftly emitted from within. Ha 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 ha, why? Are you afraid that I will scheme to harm you? Since I am the spirit of the formation, I can directly attack you if I want to deal with you. Why should I waste so much effort? Wouldn't that be asking for a rebuff? Of course, if you are unwilling to leave, I can also allow you to stay forever. Towards the end, the tone actually caused one to involuntarily feel a chill in one's heart. Immediately, even Xiao Yan's heart involuntarily turned cold. However, after pondering for a moment in his heart, he still carefully lifted his feet and slowly walked towards the end of the tunnel in front of him. Only after he walked 100 steps did Xiao Yan turn his head and look behind him. The scattered fog gradually spread, causing the current Xiao Yan to have no way of retreat. Seeing this scene, the expression on Xiao Yan's face changed once again. However, in the end, he still helplessly moved his body. As his spiritual strength spread out, he swiftly flew towards the direction of the exit. When Xiao Yan's figure gradually disappeared into the fog, a milky white fog gradually condensed at a certain spot in the formation. However, unlike before, this time around, a beautiful lady wearing a long dress appeared. The lady was wearing a long golden dress. Various kinds of formation pictures were drawn on it. The most mysterious thing was that those formation pictures were actually faintly flickering with a bright light. Ah, the spirit of the formation. What an interesting person. At the same time, Xiao Yan, who was on the other side, flew at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, he had already seen a dazzling white light at the end of the tunnel in front of him. It can't be wrong. This is indeed the exit. Xiao Yan cried out in surprise in his heart. Soon after, he instantly used the sky extinction steps. In the next instant, Xiao Yan had already appeared in front of the white light. As a smile appeared on his face, his body moved forward and instantly entered the white light in front of him. Chapter 628. Are you even worthy? The faint voice continued to resound beside everyone's ears. Although these words sounded calm, anyone could sense the coldness and disdain contained within them. Indeed, in front of a 4-star dou di, they, as ordinary dou di, were really nothing in his eyes. Humph! A cold snort was emitted from Xiao Yan's nose. He took a step forward. At the same time, the thick white flame under his feet spread in all directions like ripples of water. At the same time, a powerful aura and pressure locked onto Zhuo Bentang below. Seeing this, the expression of Zhuo Lin, who was high up in the sky, involuntarily changed. Zhuo Bentang was the strongest person from their Zhuo clan on this trip. From the looks of it, this mysterious 4-star Do Di clearly intended to continue attacking Zhuo Bentang. If Zhuo Bentang were to fall here, not only would their Zhuo clan be unable to enter the desolate ancient remains this time around, even the overall strength of the clan would be affected. Once this was the case, even if Zhuo Lin was the heir of the Zhuo clan and had the backing of the Heavenly Sword sect, it was likely that he would also be severely punished. Even his position within the clan would be affected. When he thought of this, even with Zhuo Lin's character, he could not help but feel a wave of seriousness in his heart at this moment. Although he usually had a high status in the clan, this was not only because he had the support of the Heavenly Sword sect, but also because he never made any mistakes in the clan. Otherwise, the powerful elders in the clan would not be so afraid of him. Now that Zhuo Bentang was to die, Zhuo Lin would naturally have made a big mistake within the clan. On the other hand, those elders would have something to do. This elder, I am the young master of the Endless City's Zhuo clan, Zhuo Lin. The person below is, Endless City's Zhuo family, one of the 4 great families. This old man has heard of this before. But what does your bullshit Lin have to do with this old man? This old man has only heard that there's a punk called Xiao Yan who caused so much trouble that even the 4 great sects couldn't have peace. As for what kind of thing you are. Although Xiao Yan was already aware of Zhuo Lin's identity, he still deliberately acted as though he did not know him at this moment. His old disdainful words slowly drifted out. Under the black robe, Xiao Yan's expression involuntarily changed. He had borrowed Gu Yu's voice to scold Zhuo Lin, but he did not expect Gu Yu to follow up with his words. Moreover, his words had instantly shifted the focus of their conversation to him. At the same time, the mocking words from Xiao Yan and Gu Yu caused the expression on Zhuo Lin's face to turn green. Even his body, which was hidden under his sleeves, involuntarily trembled. Just what kind of training genius was Zhuo Lin? Even in the entire western region, there were many people who knew about him. He was even groomed by the Heavenly Sword sect, one of the 4 great sects, as the next chief of the sect. Today, however, someone dared to insult him in front of so many people and even dared to say that he had never heard of him. This caused Zhuo Lin to feel that he had lost all face. Immediately, a fury surged from the bottom of his heart. At the same time, the powerful Do Qi within Zhuo Lin's body suddenly churned. Even the expression on his face was filled with viciousness and resentment. After so many years, you are the only person who has truly incited the fury in my heart. After Zhuo Lin spat out the extremely cold words, a soul-shaking buzzing sound immediately sounded in the space around him. Soon after, everyone in the area could clearly see numerous pitch-black spatial cracks rapidly appearing in the space. At the same time, the energy in the world swiftly gathered there. In the blink of an eye, dozens of golden longswords that emitted a sharp sword aura slowly floated in the space above. As these longswords slowly rotated, a glaring cold light was reflected from them in all directions, causing one to feel a chill in one's heart. Deep within one's heart, one involuntarily felt a shock because of these strange golden longswords. Just the cold light reflected from these longswords caused one's spirit to be so frightened. It was difficult to imagine just how shocking the strength of these golden swords would be when they were truly unleashed. The moment Xiao Yan saw these golden swords, he instantly understood in his heart. No wonder the Sky Sword sect would groom Zhuo Lin as the next sect leader. This was not only because of his strength. What caused Xiao Yan to feel surprised was that Zhuo Lin in front of him had actually practiced the Sky Sword sect leader's famous Do skill, the defensive sword skill, to such an extent. Just this point alone was enough to allow Zhuo Lin to be proud of himself in many aspects compared to those of the same generation. At the very least, according to what Xiao Yan knew, the number of people within the Sky Sword sect who could agglomerate over 10 golden swords using this defensive sword skill could be counted with one's fingers. In the crowd high in the sky, there was a human figure who was similarly wrapped in a black robe. At this moment, a pair of eyes that were revealed under the black robe were also staring intently at Zhuolin in the arena. Deep within his eyes, a deep seriousness was also revealed. At this moment, even Xiao Yan had no choice but to admit that Zhuolin's training talent was indeed so high that it was frightening. However, if he wanted to use this to defeat the current Xiao Yan, it was somewhat unrealistic. Today, I will let you experience the strength of my Sky Sword Sex defensive sword skill. A cold snort was emitted from Zhuolin's mouth. Soon after, one could see him suddenly waving his sleeves. Immediately, over a dozen golden swords that were emitting a glaring golden light around him suddenly moved. They carried an extremely sharp and frightening might as they instantly transformed into numerous golden meteors that cut through the empty air and swiftly charged towards Xiao Yan at this moment. Xiao Yan's expression changed. Haha. Xiao Yan's nose involuntarily emitted a faint cold laugh when he saw this. Immediately, he gently shook his head in front of the countless number of experts in the area, facing the dozen-plus golden swords that were swiftly shooting toward him. Immediately, his tone was neither light nor heavy as he slowly said, "What are you waiting for?" Then, he slowly said, "These words might be quite powerful for your heavenly sword sect master, Jian Ming. If it were you, it would just be a joke." As soon as these words were spoken, Zhuolin's face, which was already filled with anger, immediately revealed a faint killing intent. Then, he couldn't help but let out a low roar. Then, he roared at Xiao Yan in a crazed manner, "Defensive sword skill. Kill." As the roar fell, the sharp aura on the dozen or so golden swords became even more domineering. However, Xiao Yan still shook his head in disdain. When the dozen or so golden swords arrived in front of him, he slowly raised a finger and smiled. Then, a clear word floated out from Xiao Yan's mouth. "Freeze." Following Xiao Yan's order, the dozen or so golden swords seemed to have received Xiao Yan's order. The golden swords that were originally shooting towards Xiao Yan instantly froze in the air in front of Xiao Yan. Then, Xiao Yan slowly retracted his extended finger. Under the countless shocked gazes in the world, the dozen or so golden swords that were fixed in the air in front of Xiao Yan actually exploded into golden light fragments that filled the sky. Then, they gradually disappeared from this world. Soon after, Xiao Yan slowly raised his gaze and once again looked at Zhuolin. He slowly said in front of the latter's solemn eyes that were filled with viciousness. "You said earlier that I am the first person who has truly angered you. Since this is the case, the fire started because of me, so it will also be extinguished because of me." After his faint voice fell, Xiao Yan's mind moved. Immediately, the dense white heavenly flames suddenly swept out in all directions. In the blink of an eye, it had already surrounded Zhuolin, who was currently in the Zhuo clan's group. Without any explanation, just as he was about to move, the unique ice flame of the bone-chilling flame swept out. In the next moment, Zhuolin's body was covered by a layer of solid blue ice. Even though he did not die, he was already seriously injured. Chapter 629. Let's go. In the sky, Xiao Yan withdrew his gaze indifferently as he spoke in an indifferent tone. Immediately, he looked towards the entrance of the remains below. Given the strength that Xiao Yan currently possessed, he could easily kill Zhuolin and even everyone from the Zhuo clan. However, Xiao Yan did not do so. As someone of the same generation, Xiao Yan's pride did not allow him to borrow the strength of others to kill an opponent who was stronger than him. From Xiao Yan's point of view, the best way to defeat an opponent was to rely on one's own strength. Only by truly surpassing the opponent would it be considered a defeat. Otherwise, regardless of how many tricks he had up his sleeves, he would only be able to kill his opponent and not defeat him. Of course, doing so would eliminate any hidden dangers. However, at the same time, Xiao Yan would not gain any growth. If one wanted to become strong, one must first learn to respect one's opponent. Only by respecting one's opponent would one be able to see oneself clearly. The path of cultivation was not easy and everyone needed a mirror. A sufficiently strong opponent would undoubtedly become the brightest and most transparent mirror. Under the suppression of the heavenly flame, the scarlet blood fog within the cave was completely refined into nothingness by the bone-chilling flame. Xiao Yan and the Sky Eagle trio behind him also swiftly arrived in front of the entrance of the remains. At this moment, countless experts behind the four of them hurriedly followed after seeing that the blood fog had been suppressed. Now that the strange blood pillar was no longer present and the blood fog was suppressed by the heavenly flame, was this not the best time to enter the remains? Of course, even though everyone had such thoughts in their hearts, they did not dare to get too close to Xiao Yan's group. After all, they had personally witnessed Xiao Yan's strength a moment ago. If they angered Xiao Yan, who was in front of them, he would turn around and slap them. Given the strength of these people, they did not think that they had the chance to survive a strike from Xiao Yan. At this moment, the black-robed person, who had been hiding in the crowd earlier, was quietly standing within this crowd. The powerful aura within Xiao Yan's body gradually disappeared after he arrived in front of the entrance of the remains. At the same time, a paleness involuntarily surged onto Xiao Yan's face under the black robe. Using Gu Yu's strength in this manner was quite a big burden on Xiao Yan's body. After the strength was removed, Xiao Yan's body was like a deflated ball. Although he still appeared tough on the outside, he was actually weak on the inside. Xiao Yan, are you alright? The Sky Eagle trio had sensed the strangeness of Xiao Yan's body the moment the powerful aura was transmitted from Xiao Yan's body. The Xiao Yan in front of them seemed to have suddenly become a different person. Not only had his strength become extremely frightening, but the feeling that he gave off had also become extremely frightening. This feeling was similar to the strength that Xiao Yan had displayed outside the eastern wall deep within the Shilin mountain range back then. At the same time that they were shocked by his strength, their hearts involuntarily felt an unfamiliar chill. I am fine. I am just a little weak, Xiao Yan, who was covered by the black robe, gently shook his head. A familiar voice was once again emitted. In an instant, the unfamiliar feeling that lingered in the hearts of the Sky Eagle trio immediately scattered. Instead, it was replaced by a familiar feeling that was no different from before. The Sky Eagle trio involuntarily frowned in the face of this strange change on Xiao Yan's body. Fortunately, this was not the first time that they had seen Xiao Yan in such a state. They nodded. Their eyes involuntarily swept over Xiao Yan's body. Unfortunately, even though they intended to probe, any probing of their auras was useless under the obstruction of the black robe. The three of them helplessly withdrew their gazes. Only then did they withdraw their thoughts. At the same time, Xiao Yan, whose back was facing the three of them, also turned his eyes to the entrance of the remains below, which was close at hand. Only when they approached this deep and serene cave, did everyone finally see clearly that although this cave appeared deep and serene, there were circles of invisible spatial ripples on the space that was at the same level as the surface. This was the true entrance to the remains. Huff. Xiao Yan gently exhaled. The pair of pitch-black eyes under the black robe once again looked towards the Sky Eagle trio beside him. The three of them sensed Xiao Yan's gaze shooting over. They also lifted their gazes at the same time, meeting Xiao Yan's gaze in the air. My three old brothers, it is time to enter the remains. After entering, the three of you must follow closely behind me. We are still completely unaware of the situation within the remains. Just from the Blood Lake Great Formation outside, it is likely that there are even more formations within the remains. If we are not careful, it is likely that we will be consigned to eternal damnation. It was not that Xiao Yan did not want to hear these words. After all, just the formation at the entrance of the remains was already so powerful. It was not difficult to imagine just how powerful the formation within would be. If it was just Xiao Yan's own strength, he might be able to rely on the advantage of the heavenly flame to barely suppress this Blood Lake Great Formation. However, if it was the formations within the remains, he did not dare to be certain. Moreover, Gyu had already said that the attack earlier was the last time that he would help Xiao Yan. In the future, Xiao Yan could only rely on himself. Hence, he needed to be careful. Tianying and the other two behind him nodded with solemn expressions when they heard this. They were naturally able to understand the meaning behind Xiao Yan's words. They did not dare to be careless. Xiao Yan withdrew his gaze after seeing the three of them nod. He immediately exhaled a deep breath of air. His body moved, and he slowly descended. He slowly entered the remains in front of everyone's eyes. The Sky Eagle trio followed close behind. Soon after, Xiao Yan's body completely entered the remains entrance. Everyone in the surroundings seemed to have gone crazy as they charged downwards. Some of the people who were close to Xiao Yan's group also charged in the instant that they entered the remains. Soon after, a countless number of Ban D experts and even elite Do D followed close behind. They were just like a school of fish that had seen water. They impatiently and wildly charged into the remains entrance below. In the blink of an eye, the entire place was in chaos. At this moment, the dense white heavenly flame, which had been blocking the blood fog, suddenly emitted a puff sound and completely disappeared. Soon after, a large cluster of scarlet-red blood fog surged out from under the ground. At the same time, the hundreds of Ban D experts who were continuously descending from the sky uncontrollably charged into the blood fog. Chapter 630. This was a world of white fog. The milky white fog lingered in the space like clouds. With just the naked eye, one could only see a mere 10 feet in front of them. At this moment, in this world of clouds and mist, somewhere in the space, the milky white fog suddenly fluctuated. It was as if someone had suddenly thrown a huge rock into the originally calm water surface, causing it to surge violently. The clouds and mist scattered in all directions. Immediately, a figure wrapped in a black robe appeared in this space extremely abruptly. At first, the black-robed figure closed his eyes tightly, as if he was waiting for something. It was not until a few breaths later that the figure's tightly shut eyes trembled slightly, and then he carefully and slowly opened them. This place is, the eyebrows under the black robe were deeply furrowed together. Xiao Yan's gaze vigilantly looked around the world around him, and a hint of seriousness gradually surged between his brows. From the looks of it, he seemed to have entered some kind of formation. Damn it, I didn't expect to encounter a formation as soon as I entered. This ruin is really not easy to break through. With a slightly ugly expression, Xiao Yan cursed in his heart. Immediately, the eyes that had just opened slowly closed at this moment. At the same time, the vast soul power between his eyebrows also rapidly spread out at this moment, quickly spreading out in this misty white world. If it was an ordinary person when faced with this kind of situation, they would definitely move in the direction that they thought was right. However, Xiao Yan was different. If he were to rashly move in a situation where he was not clear of the situation within the formation and did not know the exit, he would only cause himself to fall into a deep maze and be unable to extricate himself. Once he landed in that kind of situation, no one would be able to save him. Therefore, for the sake of insurance, Xiao Yan still decided to use his soul power to investigate this formation. If he could use this opportunity to find a way out, it would naturally be best. Sure enough, just a few minutes after Xiao Yan's soul power spread out, a weak aura was quickly transmitted back in the direction that Xiao Yan's soul power spread out. Almost at the same time, Xiao Yan's tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. A pair of pitch-black eyes quickly flashed, and even the expression on Xiao Yan's pale face recovered a little. Found it, it's here. The moment he opened his eyes, Xiao Yan let out a cry of surprise. This time, Xiao Yan did not hesitate. His body turned and faced the direction where the strange aura came from. His feet gently stepped on the empty space below his feet, and the milky white clouds churned. Xiao Yan's body also shot out at this moment like a sharp arrow piercing through the clouds. In the blink of an eye, he had already flown a few thousand feet away. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Yan had already flown for 15 minutes in this space where the clouds rose. In the empty space, Xiao Yan rapidly flew forward. However, unknowingly, Xiao Yan's face under the black robe could not help but frown slightly. At the same time, a feeling of doubt gradually rose in Xiao Yan's heart. In the previous investigation, Xiao Yan's soul power had only spread out for a few minutes, but he had already found the exit of this strange formation. However, at this moment, Xiao Yan had already rapidly flown in that direction for 15 minutes. However, even so, Xiao Yan did not see the so-called exit of the formation. Suddenly, Xiao Yan's body, which was originally rapidly flying forward, suddenly paused in the empty space. At the same time, the expression on the face under the black robe instantly became grave. Xiao Yan did not doubt that he had discovered the exit of the formation earlier. With his soul power, although this formation was indeed frighteningly nimble, since he had already caught the flaw, there was definitely no mistake. However, what made Xiao Yan feel surprised in his heart was that he had clearly flown in the correct direction for a long time. However, why was he still unable to see the exit? Logically speaking, he should have already passed the location of the exit long ago. No, there is something strange about this place. I must not be careless, Xiao Yan secretly said in his heart. He immediately felt that something was wrong. His body moved and he was about to explosively charge forward. Since he was currently trapped in the formation and had no way to find the exit, he might as well decisively continue forward. Perhaps, by doing so, he would be able to seize a chance of survival. However, just as Xiao Yan was about to move, within this space, a soft voice that caused one's heart to palpitate suddenly rang out. Big brother Xiao Yan. The instant this voice was transmitted into Xiao Yan's ears, Xiao Yan's body, which had just moved, immediately stilled on the spot. His pair of dark black eyes widened until they were the size of a copper bell in an instant. Even his entire body involuntarily emitted an intense tremble at this moment. On his face, there was a deep expression of disbelief. Just at this moment, that familiar cry rang out once again. Compared to before, this time, it seemed as if it was right beside his ear. Big brother Xiao Yan. The instant this cry fell, Xiao Yan, who was standing in the air, suddenly turned his head. His eyes, which were already bloodshot, immediately turned. Immediately after, in the next moment, as expected, a familiar and beautiful figure was standing in front of Xiao Yan. Seeing this beautiful figure, Xiao Yan's entire person was initially startled. Soon after, his entire body involuntarily trembled once again. Immediately, the emotions within his heart were like the yellow river bursting its banks. He suddenly hugged the pretty person in front of him tightly in his embrace. The longing in his heart could no longer be suppressed at this moment. Sun Er, because of the longing, Xiao Yan's voice actually sounded a little hoarse. The young girl, who was tightly hugged in his arms, also revealed a warm and moving sweet smile on her face. Then, she gently pushed Xiao Yan away. A pair of bright and beautiful eyes looked at Xiao Yan in front of her for a long time. It was only after a long while that Sun Er slowly said, "Big brother Xiao Yan, let's go. Let's go home." Hearing this, Xiao Yan was startled at first. Then, he asked softly, "Go home? Go back to where?" As if she had heard something funny, the smile on Sun Er's sweet face suddenly became even more beautiful. Her white jade-like hands gently caressed Xiao Yan's cheeks and said softly, "Big brother Xiao Yan, what's wrong with you? Of course we're going back to the Xiao family in Wutan City." Hearing this, Xiao Yan's expression changed, as if he had thought of something. But immediately, he could not help but ask again, "Then? What about teacher? All these years, has he been well?" When Xiao Yan's words sounded, the pretty face of the young lady in front of him was startled. It was as though she had never heard of this so-called teacher. Her pair of beautiful eyes involuntarily revealed a lost and doubtful expression. Seeing this, the scarlet color in Xiao Yan's eyes quickly retreated. His face, which had become pleasantly surprised because of the appearance of the young girl in front of him, also gradually became indifferent. In the end, Xiao Yan still shook his head with a disappointed face. He took a deep breath and let go of Sun Er in front of him. He could not help but whisper in a low voice, "Ah. Thank you for allowing me to see Sun Er again. However, a fake. In the end, it's a fake. It can't become real. Goodbye." "Big brother Xiao Yan, what are you saying? Why didn't Sun Er understand a single word?" After pushing Sun Er away, Xiao Yan was about to leave. However, Sun Er, who was beside him, hurriedly hugged Xiao Yan's arm as if she did not know. Her beautiful face was filled with a pitiful expression at this moment. However, Xiao Yan was indifferent. Just as he was about to push the person in his arms away, suddenly, in the void beside him, a figure flashed quickly and took the lead to pull away Sun Er, who was hugging Xiao Yan at this moment. Immediately after, before Xiao Yan regained his senses, he grabbed Xiao Yan's arm and was about to pull him in a certain direction. At the same time, the familiar voice that was filled with warmth also entered Xiao Yan's ears. "Husband, let's leave quickly. These fellows are all fake. Sun Er and I accidentally entered this place a month ago. It is very likely that she is facing the same danger now. We must quickly find her." A voice that was filled with anxiety entered Xiao Yan's ears. Immediately, the expression on Xiao Yan's face was stunned. From the sound of it, it was actually Kai Lin's voice. Chapter 631. Xiao Yan's body was as steady as Mount Tai as he stood in the air in this world that was shrouded by clouds and mist. He remained unmoved no matter how hard the great beauty in front of him pulled. "Husband, let's go quickly. We don't know where Sun Er is now. We must find her as soon as possible." Kai Lin's beautiful face revealed an anxious expression. Her lotus root-like snow-white arm was exposed to the air. Her tender hand tightly grabbed Xiao Yan's wrist as she tried her best to bring Xiao Yan away from this place. At this moment, the expression in Xiao Yan's dark black eyes appeared indifferent. However, his gaze still involuntarily swept over the familiar lovely body in front of him. Only then did he slowly inhale a deep breath of air. He gently shook his head and slowly said in a calm yet firm tone, "You are right. You are right. Let go. You are not Kai Lin." The great beauty in front of him immediately paused when these words were uttered. Only after a couple of breaths did she slowly release her hand that was tightly grabbing Xiao Yan's wrist. Soon after, the surrounding fog swiftly gathered around this Kai Lin. In the blink of an eye, the figure in front of Xiao Yan had transformed into a blurry human figure whose face could not be seen clearly. At the same time, a somewhat indifferent and unfamiliar female voice was spat out from her mouth. "How did you discover it?" Xiao Yan's heart was suddenly startled when these words were uttered. The expression on his face involuntarily changed. A surprise involuntarily surged into his pair of dark black eyes. His gaze stared intently at the cluster of fog in front of him that appeared like a human. The shock in his heart was difficult to imagine. This formation, has actually gained sentience." It was a long while later before Xiao Yan finally revealed a surprised expression as he spoke in a deep voice. His tone was grave. It was likely that no one would be able to maintain a calm state of mind in the face of such a shocking matter. He had heard of a Do technique transforming into a spirit, but he had never heard of a formation that could do so. If that was really the case, would he not be in danger if this person in front of him wanted to attack him? The cluster of cream-white fog surged slightly after Xiao Yan's words were uttered. It immediately became quiet. However, soon after, a soft laughter with unknown meaning was emitted from the fog. At the same time, the unfamiliar and indifferent female voice was quickly emitted. "Perhaps." Hiss! Xiao Yan under the black robe involuntarily inhaled a breath of cool air when he heard this ambiguous answer. His originally frowning eyebrows were tightly knit together at this moment. The seriousness in his heart did not reduce because of this. After all, regardless of whether the other party was the spirit of this formation or not, it was likely that it would not be difficult for her to deal with him. Xiao Yan could only helplessly withdraw his thoughts after thinking for a while in vain. His breathing was a little heavy as he inhaled a deep breath of air. His eyelids were lowered and a glint flowed deep within his dark black eyes. Only then did he look at the cluster of fog in front of him. He paused for a moment before the corner of his mouth was lifted into a smile. "The reason I am able to recognize that you are a fake is because Kai Lin does not address me as husband. She always calls me by my name." The cream-white human figure in front of him involuntarily fluctuated after Xiao Yan's words were uttered. Immediately, a soft laugh was emitted from the human figure. It seemed to be mocking itself, but it also seemed to represent that this was the case. Xiao Yan involuntarily frowned when he saw this. A thought passed through his heart and the Do Qi within the vortex within his body began to quietly circulate at this moment. He was prepared to deal with this strange formation in front of him at any moment. There is no need to be nervous. You can leave this place. The faint voice of a woman was emitted from the fog in front of him after seemingly sensing the do-chi fluctuation within Xiao Yan's body. Xiao Yan's eyes involuntarily hardened. Soon after this woman's voice sounded, the fog that filled the space in front of Xiao Yan swiftly scattered to the sides as though it had received an order. It opened up a 2-meter-wide path in front of Xiao Yan. A surprised expression involuntarily flashed across Xiao Yan's eyes when he saw this. He frowned slightly and his spiritual strength spread out. It swiftly spread toward the end of the path in front of him. After the fog scattered, the speed at which Xiao Yan's spiritual strength spread out seemed to have unknowingly increased. As expected, within a couple of breaths, the spiritual strength that Xiao Yan had spread out swiftly found the exit of the formation that he had sensed earlier. Xiao Yan's expression was immediately startled when he found the exit of the formation. It was unexpected that the formation in front of him would actually take the initiative to allow him to leave the formation. This was really strange. You are really letting me leave. I don't believe that you, as the spirit of the formation, are able to do such a disobedient thing. Xiao Yan's voice hesitated for an instant before he finally could not resist asking. The cluster of fog in front of him involuntarily became silent when it heard this. Soon after, a lovely laughter was swiftly emitted from within. He, why? Are you afraid that I will scheme to harm you? Since I am the spirit of the formation, I can directly attack you if I want to deal with you. Why should I waste so much effort? Wouldn't that be asking for a rebuff? Of course, if you are unwilling to leave, I can also let you stay forever. Towards the end, the tone actually caused one to involuntarily feel a chill in one's heart. Immediately, even Xiao Yan's heart involuntarily turned cold. However, after pondering for a moment in his heart, he still carefully lifted his feet and slowly walked towards the end of the tunnel in front of him. Only after he walked 100 steps did Xiao Yan turn his head to look behind him. The scattered fog gradually spread, causing the current Xiao Yan to have no way of retreat. Seeing this scene, the expression on Xiao Yan's face changed once again. However, in the end, he still helplessly moved his body. As his spiritual strength spread out, he swiftly flew towards the direction of the exit. When Xiao Yan's figure gradually disappeared into the fog, a milky white fog gradually condensed at a certain spot in the formation. However, unlike before, this time around, a beautiful lady wearing a long dress appeared. The lady was wearing a long golden dress. Various kinds of formation pictures were drawn on it. The most mysterious thing was that those formation pictures were actually faintly flickering with a bright light. Ah, the spirit of the formation. What an interesting person. At the same time, Xiao Yan, who was on the other side, flew at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, he had already seen a dazzling white light at the end of the tunnel in front of him. It can't be wrong. This is indeed the exit. Xiao Yan cried out in surprise in his heart. Immediately after, he instantly executed the sky extinction steps. In the next instant, Xiao Yan had already appeared in front of the white light. As a smile appeared on his face, his body straightened forward and instantly disappeared into the white light in front of him. https Genius remembers this site's address in a second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 632. Golden light lingered over the enormous hall. Numerous bright golden beads were embedded into the ring-shaped walls. They emitted a gentle golden light that illuminated the entire hall. Numerous golden lines were connected together on the ground of this large hall, forming an enormous formation. It flickered from time to time and emitted a mysterious glow, causing this originally bright and beautiful hall to become incomparably bright. The entire space was filled with a gentle golden light, causing this large hall to appear extremely majestic. At a glance, one would think that this was a magnificent palace. At this moment, a couple of mysterious passageways that looked like wormholes stood within this large hall. They emitted an even gentler milky white light. However, the aura that was emitted from these passageways caused one to not dare to underestimate this seemingly gentle white light. At this moment, in this tunnel that was surrounded by white light, as the white light above the tunnel buzzed and flickered, figures were spat out from time to time. At a certain moment, a figure wrapped in a black robe finally rushed out from the tunnel. Hum, a low buzzing sound appeared. The light on one of the passageways suddenly brightened. The milky white flowing light that lingered around the passageways also fluctuated intensely. Soon after, a black flowing light suddenly shot out from within like lightning. This person was Xiao Yan, who had escaped from the formation. Xiao Yan's swiftly moving body suddenly paused in the empty space after he appeared and saw the gentle golden light in the sky. At the same time, Xiao Yan's eyes swept across the large hall below. Only then did he discover that there were actually quite a number of people in this large hall. At this moment, Xiao Yan's sudden appearance, coupled with his frightening speed, immediately attracted the attention of everyone in this large hall. Xiao Yan ignored the many surprised gazes. His eyes swiftly scanned the entire large hall. However, he did not discover any traces of the Tianing trio. Immediately, he involuntarily frowned. Soon after, he sighed helplessly in his heart. Currently, he could only hope that they had already left this place. Xiao Yan's eyes swept once again. He immediately saw 5 exits within this large hall. The exits were located in different directions. At this moment, the human figures that had exited from the passageways were all flying towards those exits. Upon seeing this, Xiao Yan once again spread his spiritual strength and swiftly spread it towards the 5 exits. However, a moment later, Xiao Yan could only helplessly frown in his heart. This time around, he was not as lucky as when he was in the formation. Even though his spiritual strength had surged into those exits, Xiao Yan was unable to find anything regardless of how he extended it. Damn it. Looks like I can only make a choice on the spot. Xiao Yan cursed in his heart. Only then did he lift his eyes and sweep them around the 5 exits. Finally, he chose the closest exit to him. His body moved and he disappeared from the spot in the blink of an eye under the shocked gazes of everyone present. After entering the exit, this place was just like what Xiao Yan had probed earlier. Both sides were completely bare walls. There was basically nothing. Although Xiao Yan could not help but feel a little vexed in his heart, he was also able to understand why this place was purposely designed in such a manner. It was likely that this place was designed to prevent people with powerful spiritual strengths from probing it. After enduring this boring journey for 2 hours, Xiao Yan finally came to a gradual halt in front of a shattered stone door. The stone door was shattered. Behind it was a huge stone room. At this moment, other than a few worthless medicinal ingredients left behind, the rest of the stone room was completely empty. It was not difficult to imagine that this stone room had been plundered. Of course, other than these traces left behind, there were still some bloodstains left on the floor of this stone room. It looked like the strong practitioner who had opened the stone door had paid quite a hefty price in order to obtain the items inside. Seeing this, Xiao Yan's heart moved slightly. Since he had found the first stone room, it meant that he could still find the other stone rooms. In that case, he would finally be able to obtain some rewards from this trip to the desolate ancient remains. As he thought of this, the corners of Xiao Yan's mouth slowly curled into a smile under his black robe. He looked at the intersection at the end of the tunnel not far in front of him. Without any hesitation, his body moved and he swiftly flew over. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Yan had already seen more than 10 shattered stone doors like the one from before. Most of the items within these stone doors were completely gone. However, from the remnant pill fragrance or medicinal fragrance, the items within were definitely not ordinary. At the same time, with the help of his spiritual strength, Xiao Yan was also able to clearly sense that there were some powerful auras left behind on these shattered stone doors. It looked like there was an even more powerful seal formation on each stone door. In order to obtain the items behind the stone door, one must first break the formation. Finally, after Xiao Yan had passed through more than 10 shattered stone doors, a complete stone door finally appeared in front of him. Xiao Yan's body also stopped because of this. This stone door looked exactly the same as the other places. There was some kind of formation pattern carved on the surface of the stone door. A faint energy fluctuation spread out from it, causing the entire stone door to be protected within. Seeing this, Xiao Yan smiled. No matter what, he had finally found a stone room. Naturally, he could not bear to miss it. With a thought, his soul strength immediately swept out. After slowly approaching the stone door, it was about to gently approach the array pattern on it. Soon after, however, one could see a bright glow being emitted from the formation. After a buzzing sound, a powerful aura was suddenly emitted from the formation. Soon after, the spiritual strength that Xiao Yan had spread out was shattered in one strike the instant Xiao Yan recovered. Ah! Xiao Yan could not help but cry out in surprise. He never expected the formation to be so tyrannical. Just by approaching it with energy, it actually took the initiative to launch a counterattack. Moreover, from the looks of it, it was not something that ordinary half-emperor experts could compare to. It was no wonder that this stone door was the only one that remained undamaged among so many other stone doors. However, immediately after, Xiao Yan chuckled. The formation on the stone door had indeed exceeded his expectations. However, he had only been carelessly probing it earlier. That was why he had suffered a setback. However, it was not certain what would happen next. The corners of Xiao Yan's mouth gradually curled into a sneer under his black robe. Soon after, the hand under his sleeve suddenly clenched into a fist. Immediately after, his body suddenly twisted, and a heavy punch fiercely smashed against the stone door before him. Boom! Immediately, following a violent explosion, Xiao Yan could not help but take a few steps back. When he looked at the stone door again, although the formation was still there was already an obvious crack on the stone door. I've really underestimated this formation. However, it'll still be broken. Xiao Yan's mouth was slightly surprised as he emitted a soft laugh. Soon after, his gaze suddenly became violent. A stern cry was emitted from his heart. Soon after, his body abruptly moved and arrived in front of the rock door in the blink of an eye. He lifted his body and a heavy whipping kick violently landed on the rock door in front of him. Octane blast. Boom! Suddenly, a terrifying force poured out like a collapsing mountain. 8 layers of hidden force exploded. Following a violent muffled sound, Xiao Yan's body did not move at all. On the other hand, the light of the formation on the stone door in front of him quickly dimmed. At the same time, cracks rapidly spread across the entire stone door like a spider web. Immediately after, the huge stone door collapsed in front of Xiao Yan with a loud bang. After doing this, Xiao Yan slowly withdrew his right leg. At the same time, his gaze followed the collapse of the stone door and looked at the space behind the stone door. The moment Xiao Yan's gaze shot into the space, he only saw a dazzling white light. Immediately, Xiao Yan could not help but squint his eyes. After a few breaths, he slowly looked at the white light in the space. After seeing the white light clearly, Xiao Yan's eyes immediately revealed a look of surprise and fanaticism. These white lights were actually pieces of spirit stones. Chapter 633. Spirit stones were the most basic source of spirit coins. They were the currency of the Yuanwu continent. At the same time, spirit stones were also one of the many training resources. Moreover, compared to an ordinary training resource, spirit stones not only provided more do-qi energy, but they were also much purer. A portion of high-tier spirit stones had even reached the stage where a practitioner could directly swallow and refine them. The so-called high-tier spirit stones were a classification of spirit stones. This was similar to the classification of qi methods and do techniques. Spirit stones were also divided into 4 grades. They were low-tier spirit stones, middle-tier spirit stones, high-tier spirit stones, and top-tier spirit stones. These 4 types of spirit stones were of different grades and the gap between them was like the distance between heaven and earth. The lowest grade low-tier spirit stone was the spirit coin that Xiao Yan currently possessed. As the low-tier spirit stones contained extremely little natural energy and the energy was mixed, it was basically useless to a true expert. Hence, low-tier spirit stones were decisively turned into the currency of the continent's experts. As for medial-grade spiritual stones, most of these spiritual stones were in the hands of some powerful sects and forces. The energy contained within these spiritual stones would increase the number of powerhouses in those forces. Therefore, comparatively speaking, medial-grade spiritual stones had become a superior cultivation resource that various forces would fight over. Of course, other than this, a middle-grade spirit stone was also an essential material in the hands of all array masters. Many high-grade arrays required a huge amount of energy as the foundation. If one only relied on manpower, it would be very difficult to maintain the array for a long period of time. At this moment, a middle-grade spirit stone could replace manpower and replenish this portion of energy. As for the higher-grade high-tier spirit stones, they were extremely rare. Once they appeared, it would cause an uproar in the continent. Every time someone on the continent discovered a mine that might contain high-tier spirit stones, it would instantly cause a huge bloodbath. Countless factions and countless experts would pay the price with their lives in order to obtain a few high-tier spirit stones. From this, one could tell just how precious high-tier spirit stones were. As for the top-tier spirit stones that seemed to only exist in legends, according to the records of the continent, it had likely not appeared for hundreds of years. That kind of thing was not only rare, but the information that people had about it was so little that it could be ignored. Other than the fact that top-tier spirit stones contained an extremely large amount of energy, no one knew anything else. In front of the rock door, the expression on Xiao Yan's face had completely solidified the moment he saw those spirit stones. Soon after, a wild joy that could not be suppressed immediately surfaced in Xiao Yan's eyes after a couple of breaths. The expression on his face was so excited that it was flushed red. His widened mouth was also unable to speak because of the excitement in his heart. At a glance, all that entered one's eyes was a large pile of spirit stones. Regardless of the tier, as long as one could take out such a large number of spirit stones, it would definitely attract the attention of a countless number of people. However, at this moment, so many spirit stones were placed in piles in front of Xiao Yan. How could this not cause one's heart to feel excited? It was a long while later that Xiao Yan gradually woke up from the excitement in his heart. His gaze hurriedly glanced at the tunnel on both sides. Only when he realized that no one had arrived did he hurriedly move and store all the spirit stones in the stone room into his storage ring. In the blink of an eye, the stone room, which was still surrounded by white light a moment ago, was now empty. There was a slightly bleak atmosphere. In this regard, Xiao Yan did not care. The surprise in his heart made Xiao Yan's heart even more excited at this moment. With so many spirit stones, although he did not have the time to carefully inspect them, Xiao Yan was certain that with these spirit stones, the problem of the strength of his 9 incarnations would be solved. He believed that as long as his 9 incarnations were able to refine these spirit stones, even if they were unable to all become 6-star half-martial emperors, Xiao Yan was certain that the majority of them would be able to become 5-star half-martial emperors. To be able to accomplish this, Xiao Yan was already perfectly satisfied. Of course, if these spirit stones were used to increase Xiao Yan's strength, it would not be a problem. However, Xiao Yan had just increased his strength. To be able to refine spirit stones again in such a short period of time was not a good thing for Xiao Yan. While being able to increase one's strength was good, everything had to be done step by step. As the saying goes, going too far is as bad as not going far enough. When things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. If one were to excessively pursue one's own strength and forcibly refine those spirit stones, even if Xiao Yan's strength increased on the surface, a gap would appear in his foundation. This was not something that Xiao Yan wished to see. However, incarnations were different. The strength of an incarnation was determined by the strength of the main body. As long as the main body was strong enough, and with sufficient natural energies, the incarnation's strength would be able to increase to the same level as the main body in a short period of time. Of course, the prerequisite for this was that there must be sufficient natural energies to support it. Evidently, this was something that the current Xiao Yan did not possess. The only thing that he could hope for was for his incarnation's strength to reach that of 5-star half-martial emperors after consuming all of the spirit stones in his spatial ring. This would be sufficient to prove that this journey was not in vain. After withdrawing his thoughts, Xiao Yan turned his gaze to the end of the passageway. There was another intersection there. Xiao Yan also believed that, other than these spirit stones, this remnant would definitely give him an even greater surprise. With a faint smile, Xiao Yan raised his hand and pulled down the black robe on his head, covering his entire body. After that, Xiao Yan lightly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot. Soon after, his body moved, and he immediately turned into a ray of black light. Like lightning, in the blink of an eye, he had already disappeared from the end of the passageway. In the following period of time, Xiao Yan rapidly traveled through the passageway. The long and winding passageway seemed to have no end. During this process, Xiao Yan also saw many stone doors that had already been destroyed. Of course, at the same time, he also saw some half-martial emperors who were doing their best to attack the stone doors. When those people saw Xiao Yan again, a trace of fear appeared in their eyes. Xiao Yan's speed had greatly shocked these people. However, even more so, they were filled with hostility. They did not wish for the result of their painstaking effort to destroy the stone doors to become someone else's. Thus, no matter how they attacked, they would ultimately leave some leeway. In response to this, Xiao Yan smiled slightly. Like lightning, his body flew extremely quickly. Every time he found a stone door that was not attacked by anyone, he would use the most ferocious and overbearing method to destroy it. This attracted extremely shocked gazes from the crowd. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Yan had already stored the items within the stone room into his storage ring. Xiao Yan directly chose to ignore those shocked gazes. After a few consecutive attacks, the medicinal ingredients and pills within the stone doors, regardless of their grade, were all stuffed into Xiao Yan's storage ring. Soon after, his figure came and went like the wind, quickly disappearing from the sight of the statue-like crowd behind him. Chapter 634. Human figures flashed within the tunnel that was dozens of feet wide. There would be a stone door every 100 feet or so. A large portion of them had already been forcefully opened under the bombardment of many experts. The formations on the stone doors had been broken, and the various treasures within had been completely looted. Bang! An intense bang sound appeared and the thick stone door was broken. The stone door collapsed and Xiao Yan stood in front of the stone door in an imposing manner. He eyed the various medicinal ingredients that were scattered all over the stone room in front of him. Both of Xiao Yan's eyes swiftly took a look around it. Finally, he withdrew his gaze with some disappointment. At this point, Xiao Yan did not know how long he had been in the ruins. However, according to Xiao Yan's rough guess, it had been 4 to 5 days. In these few days, Xiao Yan had broken through nearly 100 stone doors. However, other than the large amount of spirit stones he had obtained the first time, he did not gain anything else. Currently, the thing that Xiao Yan looked forward to the most was naturally the soul-gathering fruit and the last 2 medicinal ingredients needed to refine the ice spirit pill. However, after searching for a couple of days, he was unable to find any of these 3 ingredients. Casually putting away the medicinal herbs in the stone room, Xiao Yan's figure flashed and disappeared again. A moment after Xiao Yan left, a couple of human figures quietly appeared in front of the shattered stone door where Xiao Yan had been standing earlier in a ghost-like manner. Numerous pairs of sharp gazes randomly swept over this stone room in front of them, which had already become empty. Immediately, the leader of the few of them waved his large hand. Soon after, these few people swiftly chased in the direction that Xiao Yan had disappeared in. In merely an instant, they had already disappeared from the end of this tunnel. A moment later, Xiao Yan's body once again paused in front of a stone door. Compared to earlier, the stone door in front of Xiao Yan was different. The formation that was carved on it appeared even more complicated. The aura that was emitted from it caused one's heart to involuntarily become solemn. Seeing this, Xiao Yan's face revealed an expression of anticipation. He hoped that after opening this stone door, he would be able to find the things he needed. With an expression of surprise on his face, Xiao Yan stood in front of the stone door. His feet slowly moved back half a step. His white hand extended out of his sleeves and suddenly clenched. The dou qi in his body also suddenly gathered in his palm. Immediately, Xiao Yan twisted his body and a fist violently smashed towards the stone door in front of him. 8-level collapse. With a stern cry in his heart, Xiao Yan's fist, which was enough to cause a 7-star half-emperor to instantly lose the ability to fight, violently smashed against the stone door in front of him. Bang! An earth-shaking explosion instantly spread. The mysterious formation on the stone door also emitted a dazzling golden light at this moment. A powerful force suddenly swept out from between Xiao Yan's fist and the stone door. The powerful force directly shook Xiao Yan's body and forced him to take a step back. Hiss, this formation is indeed not something that those formations before could compare with. However, with its rebounding power, it is already several times stronger than those formations. With such a powerful defense, it is likely that even an 8-star half-martial emperor would find it very difficult to break through it. However, until the end of his words, Xiao Yan, who was under the black robe, actually revealed a smile on his face. Immediately, the gaze under the black robe was swiftly lifted. Both of his hands rotated and Do Qi gathered in his palms. After which, 2 more palms violently landed on the stone door in front of him. Yellow Spring Palm. Ancient God's Seal. 2 Tian-class Do skills were released in succession. Immediately, circular energy ripples began to rapidly spread on the stone door in front of him. At this moment, the formation also flickered with a golden light and completely blocked Xiao Yan's 2 palms. After the 2 Tian-class Do skills were blocked, the powerful force was immediately reflected back. Xiao Yan's body was involuntarily forced back once again. However, before the energy ripples on the formation in front of him could scatter, Xiao Yan's body turned and his right shoulder violently smashed against the formation. Bang bang bang. After 5 consecutive attacks, the energy on the formation in front of Xiao Yan had already become increasingly weak. Circular energy ripples began to spread out one after another, just like intensely churning water. This continued until the 7th time. The instant Xiao Yan's heavy whip leg smashed against the formation in front of him, one could hear a bang sound. The glow on the formation swiftly dimmed. At the same time, the formation diagram on the stone door behind also began to swiftly form numerous spiderweb-like crack lines. Immediately, the entire stone door collapsed in front of Xiao Yan, lifting a dense cloud of dust. After doing all this, Xiao Yan involuntarily exhaled a long breath. He immediately waved his sleeve and an invisible wind immediately swept out, completely sweeping away the cloud of dust that was blocking his sight. Immediately, Xiao Yan focused his eyes and looked over. His eyes immediately brightened. Indeed, the strength of the formation also represented the extraordinariness of the things within it. At this moment, in the stone room in front of Xiao Yan, there were 5 storage shelves neatly arranged. This was something that the stone rooms that were randomly arranged earlier could not compare with. On these shelves, there were also many jade boxes neatly arranged. Moreover, from the size of these jade boxes, it was not difficult to tell that these jade boxes definitely contained medicinal pills without a doubt. Although they were medicinal pills, the thing that caused Xiao Yan to feel joy in his heart was that those jade boxes that contained medicinal pills that Xiao Yan had discovered